Right. Hear me fumbling with my phone. I'm just going to wait and see if people come in. So just bear with me 1 second. Going to make a cup of tea actually while I wait for you guys to come in. Because I think this is a very important discussion. But I just need to know if everybody can hear me. Because I'm using a new headset that I haven't really tried out. Let me just see. I don't know why it's saying that the orientation is locked. Anyway, I don't know. Of course, I'm still getting used to. I'm getting used to like using this live mechanism, and I'm still learning a lot actually. So I don't know if there's anyway. So yeah, I'm just having a bit of a play around to see what other features are on here. Can you hear me? I'm just checking to see. Just put a thumbs up if you can hear me, please. Or just leave a little note because I can't see whether I'm actually... Anyway, we'll see. I'm going to just make a cup of tea while I wait for people to come in because I think this is a really important discussion to be having. And I don't think anybody's having it, so I think it's time we had it as a community, I would say. Since I'm mostly addressing King's supporters and fans on here. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so welcome. I'm just going to wait for some more people to come in. I'm just making a cup of tea, actually, so just excuse me if I'm fumbling around. So yeah, I just think this is a really important topic, and I'm going to tell the story of an RKelly stalker today, and I think that a lot of you will identify, and a lot of you will understand what I'm talking about today. A lot of you some of you might even identify yourself in what I discussed today, and I hope that's really what happens because I think that this discussion, I hope, will come across as non-judgmental, but also as a warning because it's a very serious thing that we're dealing with. And so this story, I guess, is not just one person's story. It's a story of many people. And it's one where I've come to see a lot of people they feel like they can't do anything about it. And I want to just discuss all of that. So I'm just waiting for some more people to come in. So feel free to grab a cup of tea. I don't know what time it is where you are or where you're logging in from, but I'm just making a cup of tea for myself so I can sit down and talk to you all about this really important topic. And I've gone into a very serious mode. Normally my lives are quite lighthearted, but this is a really serious topic and I think very close to my heart as well. So I'm going to take this very seriously as I discuss it. So who have we got going in? Let me see. So you have to excuse me. Sometimes I fumble with my words. I'm really like, I sometimes actually think that my mind works faster than my actual physical, my mouth, because my thoughts are so quick and rapid. So I tend to talk very fast, or I tend to fumble over my words. So I'm going to try and talk very slowly so that you can all understand me today. So, okay, thank you for coming into this conversation. I think it's a really important one to be having. And I really encourage anybody who wants to interact to please interact, in a respectful manner, of course, because as you all know, if you've come into my lives, I don't tolerate abuse, I don't tolerate negativity, I don't tolerate sarcasm that's just ill-placed. Jokes are welcome, but like if they're respectful and we all share the joke and it's not about somebody. Bullying is not welcome here. Harassment's not welcome here. So any of these things that people are doing online, really, that harm others, are just not welcome in this space. So I think I'm going to turn this headphone off now that I can sit down, because I can't really hear myself very properly speak. So I'm just going to switch. Just bear with me a second. Okay, I'm back. I just hate headphones. I can't really think. I can't really hear myself. I can't hear my voice. So, welcome everybody to this really important story time and discussion about erotomania and obsession with RKelly. And as you can see from the title, it says, I'm a stalker. And I have to say, I have to confess, I've kind of used that to get people coming in to hear this story. And because it's a story that a lot of people can relate to. So I think that let's first of all talk about, what erotomania is before I get into this story time. Erotomania is a mental disorder. Now, I have to first put a disclaimer that I'm not a clinical psychologist, I'm not a trained psychiatrist, and I'm not a fully qualified doctor as yet. But I have trained and I have studied counseling and I have counseled women before, so, in relationships and all of that. So I think, as part of my, of course, program of, studying the medicine that I do. So I am very aware of mental health issues. I'm very aware of how serious they can be and how prevalent they can be, especially in these times where everybody's online all the time. People are disconnected from each other, and it's becoming more and more a problem with a lot of people. And at some stage in life, I think everybody's going to have something that comes up, whether it be depression, anxiety, a stress disorder, whether it be panic attacks, it could be anything. So it's not to say that people are lower or above others who have experienced this, because you may not have experienced anything as yet, but something may trigger you later in life for it to happen. And a lot of these stories that come, the stalker stories, come from families where there's been neglect and abuse that has taken place. And the neglect has been so, I guess, so prevalent within the home that these children grow up, looking at celebrities as their, I guess, family, or their hope to get out of their situation that they're in, especially because celebrities have money, they have power, and I talk about celebrities as though my partner isn't a celebrity, because at this point I'm not a celebrity, and I can talk from the ground up and just see it from a perspective of a normal person, because at this point I consider myself completely normal, and I'm happy to be normal. I'm not, if you listen to my last live, you'll understand I have a very big, like, almost phobia. So if you want to call, accuse me of any kind of mental condition, it would be a phobia of fame, actually. And it's something that I've been working on for many years. And when I say a phobia of fame, I've never wanted to be famous, and I really hate the attention of fame. I had an opportunity when I was younger to be very famous, and I was very talented in singing, and I could dance well, and all of these things. And I was, like, pushed and pushed by other people, like, to head down the recording line the same way King did. My first singing competition, just like King, was a talent quest. So I have a phobia of fame. So if you're coming in here to hear my story, this is actually, I have to confess, it's not a story about me being obsessed with King, because I just don't have that in me. Like, I'm not triggered that way. I'm not made that way, So I've found it very hard to find compassion for these people because I have the opposite problem. I actually I run away from, and this is why most of the time you don't see me on live, because I'm just really not into like showing my face and people seeing me all the time. I do make channels. I do like, that's part of what I do for King, and us, and, our partnership, and part of, helping to get the truth out. I have a multimedia art and photography background, so I'm able to do that for him and to kind of manage our accounts. But you will not see me a lot, like, just for the sake of seeing my face, because that's just not who I am. So, if you're coming in and out, you're welcome to come in and out. I know I'm getting people that are just checking in to see what this is about. That's fine. But I hope that people sit down and actually listen, because I think this is a conversation that's been well needed. A lot has been going on online that I haven't been able to address for a long time, but it's still going on. And I think that, as I was saying, it's not a problem I have. I've found it very hard to find compassion for these people because I'm the opposite. I actually have run away from fame all my life and from attention from people. So you'll find me as the person who, if somebody's taking a photo, and I think that's why I became a photographer, because for me, it was about being behind the camera and directing photos so that I wouldn't be in front of a camera because that's just my thing. I don't like being in front of cameras unless I'm taking the photo generally. I don't know what it is. I think I'll tell you a story actually. I know where it comes from, my fear of fame, I guess. When I was younger, it started when I was young, and I don't want to get into all my, I don't want you guys to be my counselors and have to hear all of my story, but to understand, give you context as to why I think I hate attention so much, and that kind of fame attention specifically. I had a lot of traumatic experiences with that when I was younger. When I was younger, it was probably started when I was 5 years old. I had a lot of people like paying, because we were raised in Australia mostly, and there weren't a lot of black people in Australia, and so if somebody saw us, me and my siblings walking down the street with my mother, they would stop us. They would want to touch us. They would want to talk to us. And you, as a black kid, most of you understand this. How that can feel, especially as a child. You just think, what are these people doing, touching my hair and touching my skin, like to see if the color comes off, because some of them had never seen black people in real life. They'd only seen black people on television, on news programs, and most of them had come from Africa, or we really didn't get a lot of American TV except for in movies, I guess. And back then there weren't a lot of black movies that were shown in Australia. So people would be like a little bit enamored, like, by seeing these black children like in there, and we were dressed up, to the max, because my dad was a diplomat. My mum always tried to present us in a in a beautiful way. So we wore these pretty dresses that, with shiny shoes, all of that, So we were I guess, the cute little black kids walking down the street. So people couldn't help but stop us and ask where we're from and want to touch us and take photos with us. So that's where I think it started. But then it continued, because then my mum was approached by a European magazine to take a series of photos with me and her and my sister for a European magazine, but mostly with me and her. And so they took us to this beautiful location. It was an estate. They put me in a beautiful, ballet outfit, and with my mum. And so, it was all very legitimate. And but I was a shy child, like King. Like King and I, I often tell you guys that we're very twin-like. You'll hear a lot of our stories parallel. And King was very shy when he was young. I was shy when I was young. And so I was painfully shy. I hated attention from people as a child. But having somebody put a camera in my face and want to put me in these huge photos for this magazine, I thought there was nothing worse for me. As a shy child, there's nothing worse than people giving you attention. So I found it painful. I found it humiliating. I found it torturing. Like it was just torture, pure torture for me. Other children who are, who from the birth are trained to kind of enjoy that attention may not have had that, but I was different. I was not like that. So they took the photos and took them off to Europe, and I never saw the magazine, but we got these huge printouts. They were beautiful printouts, and of me and my mother, and some with my sister as well. But yeah, mostly of me and my mother in this, for this series. But it didn't stop there. We had a local newspaper that came down to. I was at that time in preschool. I was about 5 years old, and they came down and they wanted to take photos of me because I was the first little black girl in their school and their community. Can you believe it? So I was, and so there was like, it was just ongoing like attention. So they came and they did a series of photos just on me, and they put me in the newspaper, the local newspaper, with this story about, wow, there's this African family that's just come into town, and look at this beautiful, this, I don't know how that, I can't even remember how, I'm still going to dig up that article because it was back in the 80s. And but it didn't stop. It just kept going in throughout my life. I think my childhood, there was a lot of unwanted attention on me, and I was a shy child. And back then when I was little, I didn't speak much English. I spoke French, and I think I can't even remember much of my childhood because everyone was speaking another language to me. I spoke a little bit of my mum's dialect as well, but I didn't speak any English. So it was just this whole world of it was quite scary. Like I was shy and I was in this new world, and everyone was white and no one looked like me, my kindergarten, and I was little and I felt vulnerable, and now people want to take photos of me. And my mum, she wasn't as clued in like to all of that because, African parents, they just, if they have their child, they're very proud. They want their children to be very confident and articulate, and they want them to get out into the world and be successful. So my mum pushed me into a lot of these things, and I'm thankful she did because I think I may not have overcome my shyness had she not. But at the same time, it traumatized me in other ways because at the back of my mind, I always associate fame and that need to take photos of me or attention on me as negative, as people intruding on my privacy. Because I never, when you're little, when you're 5, you don't get a chance to say, no, I don't want you to take a photo of me. You're little, you can't. You just have to do what your parents tell you or what that older adult. And adults don't have a clue sometimes when it comes to children. They just take photos without checking in. So all of that. So that's why I think that's the context of why I don't have the same conditions that a lot of people do. And I think, maybe that's what also you have to ask King when he comes on, whether that was something that really drew him to me because and we never discussed it until later, but I actually said to him, and maybe that's part of why he also protects me a lot, because he knows that this is part of my personality, part of me, and also something I struggle with. So when I share this, I hope that some of you can feel a little bit of compassion for who I am, and not accept these stories that people say that, I'm an obsessed stalker, because that's just not my problem. If anything, if I ever met famous people, which I did later on in life, I got to host quite a number of famous people because I was as a side gig during my, I guess at the end of my high school years, I did some hosting for a few celebrities like R&B groups and rappers with a friend of mine. So we would, introduce them to different places and, and yeah, and then just and get make sure that they were having a good time. So there was that. Anyway, getting on to my story, like which is about this topic. So I can see people hopping in and out, and I think a lot of people hop in and out because they're hoping to see my face, and I've got to put a disclaimer there. As you know, I'm really like, when it comes down to it, at the moment, when I do these impromptu lives, you've got to know I'm really not going to show my face because it's just, I can't, I'm one of those people I can't, don't have a setup yet for doing lives. I'm just kind of doing it very casually. So when I get the setup, then I'll be able to, I guess, talk to you more face to face. But as it is, it's just if I'm holding my phone or camera and then I've got to walk around and I've got to talk to you, it's just not going to work for me. So I put the phone down and then I chat with you guys. But I am here. As you can see, this is my bench top in the kitchen. So I'm at home now. But yeah, so anyway, I've got to just tell you this story. You know, the story title is I'm an RKelly stalker and this is my story. I want to talk about the story of most RKelly stalkers here because I need to put myself in their shoes to tell this story because I'm not somebody who struggles with this, with erotomania in the least. I've always had a very balanced opinion about celebrities. That's why I've been able to be around a lot of celebrities most of my life. And I don't think a big deal of them at all. I think they're human beings just like us. And they have the same struggles and challenges that other people do, but they also have different struggles and challenges I've come to see by being with King than other people. So they are the same as other people, but they also have a different set of needs. And that's the thing that I think this world hasn't come to, because somewhere along the lines, people decided that they are public property. And so they can be criticized publicly, but they can also be humiliated publicly. They can be put on a throne. So it's all very mixed up. You can go from one day being put on a pedestal as a celebrity to being nothing. So this is the problem. You have a lot of people that I think when they attach, you have a world full of healthy minded people that go about their jobs and they go about their lives. They have their families, they have their friends, they have their, their hometowns, and they just do their own thing. And then they have, their music that they enjoy and they're fans of the music that they enjoy. And they're all the normal people, and they might really love like King's music and really appreciate his craftsmanship and his genius, and they may really appreciate. So I'm going to have my cup of tea while I talk to you. Excuse me. As I said, please feel free to go and get your own cup of tea and come and join me. But yeah, so I guess this is the tea. Anyway, so yeah, I love the fact that when people appreciate King's craftsmanship, his genius, his talent, and his legacy, I think that's what it's all about. Being a fan, that's what it's all about. Collecting memorabilia, all of that stuff is really beautiful because it shows appreciation for his gift. And I would never discourage that. Even just like, having a great time in his concerts and getting really involved in the music that he's singing, that's all amazing and so welcome and so normal and natural. Where it becomes a problem is what you're seeing online sometimes with a lot of people, and people will mask it as different things. And I want to talk about different areas where I'm identifying this kind of erotomania, this kind of obsession with him. And one of the areas I've seen it in is, let's start first of all with the relational obsession, which is the people that come out and say that they're related to him, the cousins, the godsons, the I don't know, nieces, I've heard goddaughter. There's a video of somebody who was claiming to be his goddaughter, the imaginary daughters, or children. It could be anybody. It could be that, this person, claiming that that they share a father, for example, and his father was very much alive the last time I checked. I don't know now, because he had his own problems, mental health problems. But yeah, so that is the category that where a lot of people don't want to hear about it. I'm just going to have another sip of my tea. But a lot of people don't want to hear about a lot of these people because some of you love these people and some of them are very charming and charismatic, and I understand it. Like when you draw an attachment to some of these people I'm talking about today, some of these characters, you can actually be convinced of their relationship to King because they are charismatic, they're charming, they even manage to be in touch with King. When I talk about King, I'm talking about RKelly here. So I think that just bear in mind that when you listen to this, because some of you will not like hearing this because you're a huge fan of some of these people and you're a huge supporter. And I'm not saying don't follow their channels if you get some fun or some information out of it that you find helpful. I just want you to be aware that this is not normal, it's not healthy, and it's not within the normal context of mental health. So when I talk about these people, I talk about them on the spectrum of delusion, on the spectrum of not being normal. So, when I talk about, I'm an RKelly stalker, there are different levels of stalking. And one of them can be creating this, fantastical relationship that where you're related to somebody and you're not. And this is happening a lot with him. People are coming out of the woodwork saying, I know, you like, let me tell you this, let's be clear. Like, we all have hundreds and thousands of relatives that we don't know. Like, we have our immediate relatives and cousins, and then we have, like much more distant relatives and cousins. And, and that's very normal. Like, we have people that are long distant relations and they may share even a surname to us. That doesn't mean that that they should be in our lives. That doesn't mean at all that they are mentally okay and mentally healthy either. So just because you share a name or you share a lineage of some kind, you've got an ancestry connection, that doesn't mean that you should be in RKelly's life, because he has a lot of relatives out there in this world and that he doesn't know. And we don't want them, and I definitely don't want them trying to come and knock on his door, trying to be a part of his life because they see him vulnerable right now, or they've seen him vulnerable and they've thought, wow, this is a great opportune time for me to, use that, that ancestry card and get into his life. It's not going to happen, like, not on my watch. This is the thing. I know a lot of these people don't want to listen to my channel, don't want to hear this, but I hope this message gets out there that the reality for them is going to come crashing down. And I think in their minds that must be very scary. If you're an erotomaniac or a celebrity like obsessed person, the reality scares you. The reality that King would be with me would mean that they have no place in his life. And all of these people don't have a place in his life. I'm telling you now, because there's not anybody that King listens to more than me on this planet. There's no one, apart from God, I should say, of course, and I always encourage him to listen to God first. But I'm just saying that, so when it comes to him, there's nobody that's going to have more say in who is in his life than me. And I'm very, very balanced. I'm very, very fair, but I'm also very cautious and very protective of him. So all of these people that are claiming some kind of relation to him, it's not on my watch. Like, it doesn't, like, he has a whole lot of other relatives on my side that are, can't wait to meet him. They can't wait, to have him over. And these are healthy, balanced people that are not obsessed with celebrities. And if I find that there are some in my relations, then trust me, I'll also keep them out as well, because of course I have hundreds of relatives as well. And who knows what all of their mental health, situations are. And for me, it's all about keeping him safe, keeping us safe, keeping our life safe. And when I talk about these relations, it's not to say that they don't have some ancestry connection to King. That's not to say that. I don't want to deny that because I've not seen any DNA tests from these people. But I will say that just because they're making these claims at a vulnerable time, I can see it. I'm somebody who's been trained in counseling, in health, mental health, in psychology, all of these things, psychology. I almost became a psychologist and a psychiatrist, but I went down the path of a different type of medicine. So I see it from far away. I can see how these people are maneuvering around him and trying to move themselves in a way, a position where, when he does come home, that they're part of his life. And as a result of that, they become a part of his famous world. And how I can tell this is because they're so eager to be seen as his relatives, so eager to be seen without any evidence shown, without any DNA evidence, without any connection to him prior to this situation. And it's all opportunist, it's all opportunity at this stage, and it's not, for me, sincere. Because if you're sincere, and let's say you are a relative of his, if you're a genuine relative of RKelly's or Robert Sylvester Kelly, then what I encourage you to do is go get the DNA testing first to prove your relation to him. Secondly, leave that aside and don't even mention it online, and just support him as you would a normal person would, without you needing to use that banner, I'm his relative. Because that, to me, it's a red flag. If you're out there saying you're his cousin, if you're out there saying you're his, his sister or his brother, and you're not. I'm not talking about Bruce and Kerry, who you all know are his brothers. If you're out there claiming to be his girlfriend or fiance like Joycelyn Savage, and you're not, these things are red flags that all of you should be paying attention to. The bad thing is, unfortunately, King is in this position where he has had to tolerate, not just tolerate, go along with these stories, these fictitious stories, because he's been in such a vulnerable position. So you see these people coming in and saying, we're your sisters, we're your cousin. He has nothing, he has nothing to go on. He doesn't have, the scientists to do the DNA testing. He was in a very desperate emergency situation where everyone had abandoned his kingdom, everyone had abandoned ship. And so now you have these people coming in saying, we're your family members and we love you and we'll support you. Then what are you going to do if you're in his shoes? Will you not just take whatever support you can get in the meantime while you work it all out? Of course you're going to do that, because he's a kind-hearted person, but he's also somebody who's been too vulnerable for too long. And I tell you why he's been vulnerable, because unfortunately, he didn't have, the great close family situation that he wanted to have. Whenever you're in that situation where you don't have close family members around you, surrounding you, you become vulnerable to vultures, and you become vulnerable to people outside of you, or outside, claiming or trying to make themselves family to you. And that's for any of you out there that's also alone, because you might have, like trauma or problems within your family where you can't communicate with them. There's abuse, there's other things that are going on. You can be vulnerable to the narcissists and the vultures that come through, that see you as a target, and they go, oh, look at that woman. They know, it's almost like these people sense they're vultures and they're predatory, because they're like, I'm not saying all of them, but I'm just saying most people, a lot of these people that come for celebrities like him, are very predatory. They can sense, almost like a sixth sense, that he's vulnerable in this area of his life, because they hear his story with his family. You hear about the story of Don Russell, for example, who, people don't want to talk about his story, his background story, the supporters of him. But I'm going to tell you the story of, I've put a video a few years ago about him actually, and how he came back, how he came into King's life, because he had that connection I'm talking to you about, like that distant connection. They were in the same neighborhood, they knew some of the same people. He used this as a way to, I guess, get into King's good graces, because he heard about what happened with surviving RKelly. He heard that people had abandoned him. He heard that people were betraying him. And that lit a light bulb moment in him, because this is the thing about sociopathic people. The second they hear about your vulnerabilities, they are in there. They're right there with you. And so he heard about this remotely. And the first thing he thinks is, because sociopathic people don't have that basis of reality. They have delusions of grandeur. They always think that they can help everybody. They can save you. They can help you. They can be your hero. They can be the person you need. They can be your manager. They can be your best friend. They can be your brother. They can be everything you need. And especially if they have this affliction, I guess, of like obsessive fan disorders, and so Don Russell heard that King, this story that, surviving R. Kelly had hit. So the first thing he thinks is, oh great, let me try and find him. So where would you go if you wanted to find someone like King? Like, I'm trying to get you guys into the heads of these stalkers and how they think. It was very easy to know, like, and this is something that's going to change in the future. I don't want people to know his movements. There's a lot of people that now what they're doing is they will post a story, of where they are. Like, they might go to a location, but then post the video of that a week later so that people don't know that they're there. And that's the kind of thing we're going to start to do. I'm going to encourage King to do, is never post directly from his location, whether he be in the studio or at home or wherever, that he posts later on so nobody knows his movements. Because unfortunately, in the past, he's been so naive in thinking, if I post this now, you know, he's just been so trusting, too trusting of people, too trusting of the public, and too, I think, innocent to the idea that there is mental health problems in this world, and people are very mentally ill out there, and they will target him for corrupt and and deviant purposes. So this Don Russell person who they wanted to associate, the government tried to associate with him, and successfully did, because of their propaganda and their mission to paint him as this crime boss and this trafficker, is by painting this big picture of these criminals and these people that he didn't associate with and didn't have any connection with as being part of his entourage or his collective community or his gang or his mob of people. And King had nothing to do with Don Russell until the day I'm going to tell you what and this is his own words, Don Russell's own words. I don't want you to think I'm putting words into the situation. His own story should have revealed to you what happened. He said that he turned up at his studio knowing that's where he would be. So he didn't have his home address. He didn't have his phone number. He didn't have anything that, somebody who would know him intimately would know. He didn't have any of these things. He turned up at his studio where he knew he would eventually come to, and he waited. When he didn't see King the first day, he came back. And he came back, I think, the third time. And third time lucky, King was there. Voila. And I think that that's just how stalking works. That's how stalking ends up becoming a situation where they put you as part of his entourage and fake associate, and then other people believe you because you make an appearance outside his studio because you happen to be at the right place at the right time. Now, he managed to convince King into letting him help. And this is what a lot of stalkers are doing. I want you to be aware of this, that there are some online, some remotely, some outside. We can't control all of these people. I know. All I can do is work through him and tell him, don't let these people in. But sometimes King, unfortunately, like, he doesn't, like, I have to say this, he does what he needs to do, what he feels he needs to do in that moment. And I'm trying to get him to the point where he just, he's more aware for himself, because I'm not a controlling character. I'm not, by any means, like a woman who's going to tell my man or my partner what to do. I respect his autonomy as a man. I respect him as a man. I respect him as a man who's had more success in life, more success in his career than I have managed to in mine. And I hope that some of you will have that humility in, no matter where you stand on the R. Kelly, argument. You've got to acknowledge that most of you have not had any success that he has had, including his attorneys, including these prosecutors. None of them have had the success in life that he has had with his dyslexia, with his, background of coming from the south of Chicago. None of them have achieved anything that he has achieved in life. I have that humility. I understand that. So there's some areas I just, I'm his partner, as in I'm here to help him and direct him back to God. That's what I do. I direct him to God to get his God's view about things and God's view about people. I direct him through my experience of people, but at the end of the day, I have to leave him to make those decisions for himself. So some of the people you see him associate with online, I'm not with it. I'm not with it, but I support him, but I don't support his association with them online. I don't support him contacting them, I should say, because I know, because he can't see what they're doing online. He can't see the full picture of these people. He's getting letters and he's getting messages, like, getting these charming letters of how much they are devoted to helping him, how much they are on his team, how much, they're good people. And anybody can fake that. If you've only got, all you have as perspective is this little room that he has in this hellhole that he's been in, and letters that come through, and your only perspective of the world is what people are telling you, then this is why he ended up appearing and doing these interviews despite what I believed he should do. And I didn't hear about it until it was already done, unfortunately. And like, that's not something I would have supported, but people have been writing to him. He got desperate because he was feeling like his voice was being muffled, being like his voice was being cut off from the world, and no one was hearing his own voice. And my perspective is this: I love King to pieces, but he has been so famous for so long, he isn't as connected to the real world and reality as I am. So his perspective of life is not the same as a normal person. He's been in this kind of bubble. And so when he hears about this person's doing really well, he doesn't see it from the perspective of the normal person, that this is a clout chaser and this person's just after his fame and fortune. He just thinks, oh great, a supporter, a fan, somebody who appreciates me, fantastic, I'll run with that. And I'm trying to get him out of that mentality into the mentality of, no, everybody's a predator. To you who's famous and RKelly, everybody you should see as a predator to you. Like, you should see everybody. You have to excuse my growly stomach. I've got to eat something too, by the way. And that's why I came to make a cup of tea. Feel free to get a cup of tea, by the way. I'm going to yabble on for a little bit. But I'm trying to get King to the point where he sees everybody as a predator to him, because that's where he will start to put up real boundaries with people, because at this point he's still a little bit still saying to himself, well, these people still support me and still love me, and that's something for me to go on. So when you see him contact this person or that person, just know that he's trying to be grateful. That's how he shows gratitude. And unfortunately, it's not always the right thing that's not all, sometimes against my judgment of what he needs to do and my opinion as his partner. And I'm not to say that, we don't, like, this is the thing you have to understand about relationships. For some of you that, may be in one or may not have been in one that's been long term, you're not always going to agree. You're not always going to agree with each other. You're not always going to see eye to eye at every moment of every day, no matter how aligned you are, how in love you are, how much you respect each other's opinion and view, which King does. It's at the end of the day, you're two different individuals. And if you can respect that individual, your individuality, then you're going to do a lot better in your relationship with whoever you're with, whether it be your family members. You have to respect their individuality, their autonomy. Any relationship, when you start to try to control people or tell people what to do, it becomes problematic, because then you're trying to be God in their lives, and you're trying to manipulate them, and that's not how you inspire people to change. That's not how you inspire growth in people, and that's not how you get closer to people either and keep your relationship healthy. A healthy relationship respects each other's autonomy, and you share as much as you can, but there's going to be times where there is conflict and there is differences of opinion, and you've got to work through those differences of opinion to a place where you both agree and you both can see the same perspective of different issues. And that's what King and I are working on. So when you see him online contacting different people that I have identified as problematic to him, just know his reason for doing that is because he feels gratitude for what they, for their support. Any support he has received, he feels deep gratitude for. But I want to change that in him to being, okay, you can feel gratitude or help him change it in himself, I should say, to feeling gratitude, but not needing to take that step to actually show people, to put himself in a position where he's vulnerable and he can be attacked, or he can be attached to the wrong people and the wrong characters, because that's what happened with the Don Russell situation. Don Russell stalked him outside his studio 3 times, eventually got him in the studio, sat him down, said, look, I can help you, remember we have this person in common, I'm from your neighborhood. He sold him love bombing. That is a first sign of like somebody who's stalking, who might be narcissistic, who might be sociopathic, who might even be a psychopath. The love bombing thing, which is, I'm from your neighborhood, I know this person, you know that person, we know it, I can help you, I can do. They become whatever you need them to be. They're the chameleons that become whoever you need them to be. And that's what Don Russell did with King. He saw that he didn't have good management of his financial records. So he thought, wow, that's his vulnerability. I can do that. That's what he sold King. I can have a look at that for you. I can have a look at anything you need me to. And so King was like, okay, well, let me just trust you to, give you to share this with you, since we've had a few conversations, we have, shared background. And that's what I'm getting at, that I think King needs to start seeing people as all predatory, no matter how kind you are. He has to have that level of suspicion against everybody. I'm sorry. I love you fans and supporters to pieces, but until he gets to that level where he sees himself as who he really is, and not as, the Robert Sylvester Kelly that grew up on the south side of Chicago, until he sees himself and he really accepts that he is in another dimension, another reality, and another world that is not safe for, other people to enter, because other people don't understand it, and other people won't be able to deal with his wealth, and they won't be able to deal with his fame very well. And that's what happened with the Azrael Clarys and the Joycelyn Savages, and the, fill in the gaps, all of these women, Faith Rogers. They shouldn't have been in his world in any sense, not as interns, not as anything, not as friends, not as anything. Because when you take somebody who's never seen money, never seen that kind of fame, but who has an obsession with that kind of world, it's going to end badly, because eventually what's going to happen, they'll fall in love, they want a relationship, they want marriage. And if it's not reciprocated, like he hasn't with any of these women, then what's going to happen is that they're going to turn AWOL. They're going to go AWOL because they don't have the mental capacity and the foundation to deal with rejection, which is what I'm talking about when I say erotomania. It's that fantasy of and I've heard it sometimes in the comments. I want you to all be aware of it in yourselves, in other people. When you see this in other people, then stand back and say, wait, am I witnessing somebody who's experiencing a celebrity obsession? Have they had a history of this? Have you seen these people like go from one celebrity to another celebrity? Have you seen them try to put themselves in positions where they can be around celebrities all the time, and that becomes part of their job, when they're not really making much money from it either, but they're somehow, now that's their work, that's what they do, that's their identity now they're a celebrity gossip blogger or a celebrity journalist. But then that requires them to always be around celebrities. I'm not saying that all bloggers and celebrity journalists are like this, but I want you to identify the people that you're seeing that have this disorder, that's a little bit like, wait a sec, why are they trying to always keep the control, or keep the connection with certain celebrities, and why do they kind of try to smooth talk celebrities, and why are they trying to why am I witnessing somebody who's always trying to be around celebrities? What is really going on here? Or be around this celebrity, be around RKelly, or trying to compete with other people who are around him, or for attention of him. These are things that, that are signs of obsession. They're signs of somebody who's lost touch with reality, because normal people don't do this. Even as his partner, you won't see me online fighting with people, because for attention, because I hear that he's sent somebody an email, or he sent somebody he's called somebody ingratitude. You won't see me fighting with them, because I know who I am. I know who I am to him. I know that these people are not going to be around him, no matter what they think or what they feel or what association that they've conjured up and they've portrayed to the outside world or YouTube. These people are not going to be in our lives, because I'm his partner. I do get a say as to who comes in our lives, and they're not invited to the barbecue. They're not invited to the cookout. We call it barbecue in Australia, but it's cookout in the US. These people are not coming to our cookouts. They're not coming to our home. They're not coming into our lives. And that's just how it is with me. Had he been with somebody else, maybe who wasn't as protective of him, who didn't love him as much, or love or appreciate the quiet calm that I enjoy, this maybe that person would have let all these people in, i.e. all his exes that he has been with, who didn't care. They didn't care about sharing him. They didn't care about, him coming and going whenever he wanted, and around different people that were dangerous and harmful to him, because they were not there for him. They were there for themselves. They were there to see where they could go in life, and how they could, move up in life and move up in the ladder, and the social ladder. Whereas I'm here for him. Our connection is very deep. It's very sacred. It's very spiritual. It's very loving. It's very wholesome. And I'm not here for anything but him and our relationship, and to grow our relationship to the next level. So for me, it's a no. It's a no to, all of these people. It's a no to all these people that want to obsess over him online and portray themselves as somebody to him, because at this point they're getting a lot of support by using these I guess these descriptions of their association, false or not. Even if King has contacted you, so what? Do you know how many people he has contacted? How many fans? Do you know he's done so many things for different fans just to show appreciation. It's a so what at this stage. I want you all to see that. So don't be pulled into people. And I keep saying don't you be, because I think most of the people on my side, on this channel, understand all this by now. We all are in agreement to that. But there are a lot of people that drop in to this discussion, from an outside perspective. There are some, unfortunately, the channel hasn't grown enough for me to reach more people. So I think some of you have to spread that message, without targeting people for bullying, because I'm not about that. I don't want anybody to bully anybody. That's not what King and I stand for. We don't stand for bullying. We don't stand for harassment, despite what he's been portrayed as somebody who's sending people off to blow up cars. Come on. I really can't stand all of these fake narratives that are made up about him, putting him with people that are real criminals, real psychotic, real psychopaths, real sociopaths, real narcissists, real traffickers. All of these people are real deviants. And, the US government wanted to keep putting him in line with them to build this story and case against him. And it's a false narrative that has to stop, because it's false. It's nothing to do with the reality of who he is. It's a delusion. It's delusions on their side. So when I talk about delusions, I'm not just talking about people that, that love King and love RKelly and love celebrities. I'm talking about delusions of people that don't like King. There are delusions even in that. You can have delusions about certain celebrities because you are obsessive and you don't have touch with reality. You're not grounded in reality. You don't understand the different relationships that can go on and the different situations that can go on in this world. So you hold these fantastical ideas of celebrities, of them living in dungeons and, having, orgies all day, every day, and, and then inviting in women all day, every day. That's not what was happening in King's world. He was making music 99% of the time. That 1% of the time where he did have liaisons was 1% of his life. The 99%, he was making music, he was touring, and he was all about the music. The other 1% was when he was letting his hair down and trying to relax, and he had these groupies that just were obsessed with him. And eventually some of them he mistook for, like people that were balanced and mentally okay to have these relationships with, and not understand that, that there was a cost to that, unfortunately, and that's where we're at. So that these people were delusional, that came like obsessively round him, followed him from city to city, and you'll know these people by, their stories. You have to listen to the stories. When you're like stalking somebody for so long online, looking at his movements, and then eventually you manage to get in touch with him, that's not trafficking. And then you manage to convince him to intern you. That's not trafficking. I'm sorry, US government. I'm not somebody who's been trained in law, but I can tell you that's not trafficking. When somebody's stalking a man for years with their family members, harassing him to look at their daughter, to audition her, that's not trafficking. What that is targeting and predatory behavior. It's narcissistic, sociopathic, maybe even psychopathic behavior. And it's behavior that as a society, we have to not be okay with, or not be saying this person's a victim of the person they're targeting. Because when they eventually get to that person, of course, what are they going to do after all these years of targeting, stalking, harassing, like wanting to just get in touch with him? Of course, what are they going to do? If they get rejected, what are they going to do? They're going to do the same thing that they did to get around him. Criminal activity. They're going to resort to crime and false accusations because they haven't got what they wanted. After all this time stalking you, we've invested all of these hours flying around to your concerts, fake IDing our daughter as 18, so that you can with all our delusions of grandeur, with all our delusions of where she could go around you. Come on, we have to get down to reality as a world, because we're not going to survive this avalanche of false accusations that are going around in our community, in the world, so around celebrities predominantly now, because celebrities are the latest target. But next it's going to be you and me. At the moment it's celebrities, but it's going to be you and me next. Because imagine if they can do it to powerful men like King, who has had money, who had power, who had esteem, who had public status. Imagine what they can do to you who has nothing. How are you going to fight? Or somebody your son, your nephew, your niece, because it sets a precedent. It sets a precedent for the future cases that go beyond King. It says if they can do it to him, they will do it to you with far less money. And you don't have the money, you don't have the means, you don't have the supporters, and you won't find them. And you won't. And if your son or daughter is caught up in that because they happen to end up, a star of any level, whether it be, MBA, or even just in a prominent position of power within a business or company, if they end up in that position, and this is not fixed, and we don't fix these distortions of reality that people are trying to portray as real, that celebrities would stalk and traffic their groupies that have been obsessed with them, that they're twisting these stories around, that the people that they employ and that they try to help are the ones that they are targeting, instead of the ones that the criminals are that criminals are targeting the celebrities, is what I'm trying to say. And that's what's going on in this world. And so when I talk about erotomania and a celebrity obsession, it can happen at any level in life. So just because you see somebody as a music manager, or as a music attorney, or these things sometimes can be red flags for people that are obsessed with celebrities, because they make sure that they're always around celebrities, or they're obsessed with fame, because some of these people want fame through the people that they try to support. And so just because you see a case or something where somebody who used to be a supporter of a certain celebrity is now accusing the celebrity of something doesn't mean because they already had a job or they already had a position that they had nothing to lose, whether it be a producer, whether it be an attorney, whether it be a doctor. It doesn't matter what your position in life. You can still be a criminal, you can still be a liar, you can still be psychopathic, you can still be sociopathic, you can still be narcissistic. If the criminal channels like Law and Crime and all of these things haven't shown you that anybody can commit a crime. We've seen doctors as rapists. We've seen lawyers as stalkers and predators and killers. We've seen serial killers that lived amongst the community, and we said, well, and people said we're so nice and so kind. All this time they were killing people and harming people. So I don't want people ever to tell me that just because somebody has a prominent position in power, whether it even be the government, and especially the government, you know how much they hide behind these positions. Psychopaths, stalkers, sociopaths, they hide behind all kinds of positions in life. No one is immune to this. No area of life is immune to having stalkers and obsessive people and sociopathic and mentally unwell people. Nothing, no area of our community is immune to it. So of course the Hollywood area is not immune, but it's not especially for that area. It doesn't mean just because it's Hollywood that it's predominantly in Hollywood. No, it's not predominantly in our world. We have psychopaths, stalkers, we have sociopaths, we have narcissists, we have pedophiles in our world. That's just it. I was reading a story, I was listening to a story the other day, and as you guys know, I post a lot about Catholicism because that's that's the faith I follow. But I want to specify that these cases of like child abuse have been within the Catholic faith for years, and I want to talk about that because I know it's put a lot of people off Catholicism, and I'm going to talk about that because I was praying to God about that for a while, thinking, why is it that predominantly, like within Catholicism, you will find these, some of these people, and in the holiest churches and the holiest, because to me, because the Catholic faith is the Catholic Church is Jesus's original church. It's the original church of all Christianity, whether people like it or not. Before the Catholic Church, there was nothing in terms of Christianity. So whether you like it or not, that was Jesus's original church. And the traditions that are still held there come from that. All these fractions, the Baptist and evangelicals and, Pentecost, all of that, they came from the Catholic faith as fractions because they didn't agree with the Catholic church's stance on a lot of things. So I want to specify that, and this is why for me it is the faith that I follow, but because it has held for me like a certain a certain tradition and certain articles of faith that I can't find anywhere. And I'll explain more in detail one day more about my faith. But I had to look at the Catholic faith very honestly at one stage and go, why are there so many pedophiles that come out from the history of the Catholic Church? And it occurred to me that if you were somebody who had a serious evil inside you, if you're somebody who was seriously evil, because pedophiles are evil people. Let's not get it twisted. They're evil people. When I say evil, they've lost all goodness inside them. When you start to harm a child, you've lost all sanity, you've lost all humanity, you've lost all morality and all connection with God. You have to block God out. But where would you go if you were like somebody of that, that level of evil? Where would you go to see if you could get, like, if I would, like, I'm not saying I can't relate to any aspect of, pedophilia or any aspect of these people, but I just had to think about it for a second and go, the Catholic Church is one of the holiest churches. I don't care what people say. If you walk into a Catholic church, there is a energy there of God's presence. You feel a certain, like, quiet, powerful, mystical, you feel it. And so if you were somebody who was evil and you thought there was no hope for you, you would probably go down the line of abstinence. You'll probably go down the line of becoming a father and or a bishop or whatever, of abstinence, and also the line of where you could find hope for your to correct your evil, the evil inside you. But not, some of these people just don't end up healing that, and they don't end up ever fixing that, and majority of them have been abuse victims from childhood. These Catholic preachers, Catholic fathers and bishops and such, that have been caught up in these situations. And I can think of particularly one father. His name was Father Jackson. You can look up his story, and the whole story was that he had a lot of, I'm getting a little bit off topic, but I think this story is really interesting. When you hear him at church, when you see him on a live stream of his service, you could think this man was the holiest man you could ever find. And just very articulate, very well presented, very quite calm about him. Meanwhile, they found, I don't know, somebody's dropped a story, like, I think, or accused him, like back in 2000, I think there was a rumor that started circulating. So they investigated his technology, which is the first place that they should investigate pedophiles. And I'm happy to say, and this is something that I don't know why nobody even talks about, they confiscated every single thing of King's and could not find one image of a child or abuse victim anywhere on any of his technology. And I don't know why that wasn't brought up in court, but let me just say that out there. But if King was a pedophile or predator, you would find things on his technology. They had to take stories of him and having a conversation with, of Azrael having a conversation with her mother, and twist that around to involve King because they couldn't find anything. That's how desperate these people got to convicting King. So anyone listening to this who doesn't know the story, King wasn't convicted because they found articles and they found there were no tapes. There was one tape that was rehashed from the old trial. There were no tapes of him. And this edited videotape had actors on it that one of the so-called victims on Surviving RKelly was connected to back in the first trial. So it's corrupt all over. There was no level of any kind of pedophilia, abuse, or anything. They twisted stories of him having, a BDM session with a girlfriend from the past who wanted that kind of experience to, oh, he's abusive. How could you do that? How can you, in your right mind, and how can you morally do that and accept that as a world, that this is abuse? I think the people that are against King need a check with reality, because your problem is reality. It's not that you're confused. It's you have a problem with accepting reality. You're disconnected from reality, and you think that reality exists in a world that you've created. Whatever world you create, that you think that that's the world that exists, but it's not. The world that exists is the world that's on the ground, and it's actually happening as we speak. The people are having sexual experiences of all kinds, and it isn't always as you want them, as you see sex, as you see sexual experiences. And it doesn't mean it's abuse. What it means is sometimes people have those preferences, and then they twist it. They can twist it when it comes down to the pay, because you have a groupie who's always wanted fame and money. She couldn't get the money. She couldn't get the man. So what does she do? She resorts to becoming part of this collective. So then she can go and sue him, because now she sees the uproar has worked, and she thinks, wow, I can cash in too, like with this video that we did together, consensually, and of legal age, by the way. So all of this, and it just ties into this story that I'm going to give you, because I want people to learn from things. I want people to learn from King's story. I don't want people just to come out of this going, well, what did we learn out of that? Let's do it again. And then they find another celebrity to target and do the same to. I want people to learn what's going on and to see things with clear eyes. I want people to wake up. I want people to wake up from their slumber. If you're listening to this and you still are, considering different stories as real that I've already said are not real, I want you to come down to reality and hear me. These stories that you've heard about him that are outside this channel are not real. They're stories other people have made to make their reality real so that they could fix something that's evil or disconnected inside of them. Nothing to do with King. He's been caught up in other people's lies and delusions for 5 years, and so have I. We've been victims of other people's delusions and madness and their craziness and their erotomania and their obsession for him and their delusions about his life and his lifestyle. So this is where we're at. So when I talk about this father and this holy father from, well, this so-called holy father from this Catholic Church, Father Jackson is his name. You can read his story. And I was asking God about this, and I was asking God, like, why is it that, in the holiest and Jesus's original church, you would find these predators, these pedophiles, these evil, sadistic people? And it occurred to me that that's where evil people, like, if you wanted to overcome your evil, you would go to the closest thing to God that you could find, and the closest place you could go, to find God. So I think this is just my interpretation. It's just how I've prayed, and these are the answers that have come to me. It doesn't need to be your answers, and you can pray about it yourself and get those answers as well, but your own understanding through God. But that's what occurred to me is, because a lot of these people see themselves as sick, and they're disordered, they're sick, there's something mentally wrong, there's something morally and spiritually wrong and completely corrupted. A lot of them were children of abuse, and then they've gone on to become abusers, and then they find solace in abstinence. So that's why they become fathers where they don't have any sex, they don't have any contact with sex at all, and I think in my mind I can see how they would want to try that path to rehabilitate themselves, but find themselves in a situation where they're not rehabilitated because they haven't made that decision to change. But something is actually wrong with them. Something is wrong with these men that do this, and so sometimes you can't fix a disorder that's become a brain disorder, that's become a disordered way of viewing the world, and so that's my interpretation when I heard about his story, because he was hugely supported by his congregation and the members. And I want to talk about that actually, because I learned a lot from his story that I really want to share, because it wasn't just that he was actually guilty. He was guilty as you could possibly. They found images not just of children. They found images, sadistic images of children with animals and all kinds of disgusting evil. And I'm sorry, I should put a disclaimer if you're listening to this, and you're sensitive to abuse and all of that, please just log off now, because these stories might trigger you, and I don't want to trigger anybody. And so so this video even might be flagged to be shadow banned and ID checked and all of that they start doing now on YouTube, which I welcome, because I don't want anyone to be triggered, but it's an important conversation that we have to have. I've been saying this, that how you kill off evil and darkness is you bring it to light. You don't hide in the shadows and can commit corruption and abuse of other people, like E.G. King, in the name of goodness and protecting the community, when he's not even close to any kind of predator, pedophile or abuser in any sense, or even an ephebophile, which is somebody who's into underage women. He's not close to that, because had he been, he would have been in a relationship with Azrael Clary and Joycelyn Savage. He would have been in a relationship with Aaliyah, which he wasn't. All of these are fabricated relationships that had for other people purpose, but not for him. He ended up taking the fall for other people's lies and their deceit and their predatory and abusive and all of that natures, trafficking natures, had nothing to do with him. He got caught up in that by making bad decisions to try to help these women. He made those decisions. That's his responsibility. That's the only responsibility he holds. He doesn't hold the responsibility for what happened to these women, like after or during, like their mental psychosis, because they didn't get the things that they wanted. He doesn't have anything to do with that. He's only responsible for himself. And he never had a relationship with Aaliyah. No, not at one time was he with Aaliyah. That relationship, that marriage was all fabricated, and it was a fake marriage for publicity for her, under the leadership of their joint management. And that's a story I've already covered in one of my videos. You can look it up where it says Aaliyah. It's one of my first videos that I ever made, I think, on here. But, I think then you've got the story of Aaliyah and, sorry, Azriel Clary and Joycelyn Savage, and you see how they were interns. And and Azrael was 17 when she tried to intern with him initially, but she was using ID that said she was 18. So he accepted her as an intern, believing she was 18. When he found out she was 17, he sent her home. That story somehow doesn't make it to the papers. He sent her off home. So she was interning on the road with him. When he found out she was not 18, he sent her off home. She came back begging and pleading, and with permission from her parents and all of this. And I believe at 18, I've got to check that with King. But, the point is there was no relationship there, sexual, intimate or romantic at all. What has been fabricated by his attorneys has nothing to do with King. What's been fabricated also on the other side has nothing to do with King. Jennifer Bonjean, let's be clear, got the information about their relationship, or this fake relationship, from two sides. Stephen Greenberg, who originally concocted the story, and the US government, who had every objective to make up this story. So neither were telling the truth. And Jennifer Bonjean, refusing to get it from her client and refusing to get it from her client's partner, the truth, she refused. She plain and simply cut me off and blocked me after like a number of weeks communicating with me. And she refused to go back to her own client and ask him for this information and to correct it and to make it right. She put it on his motions without his permission. Do you understand this? I want some of you to understand that she put on his motions that there was a relationship without having checked with him. She got the information. She told me, and I have this in writing, she got this information from the US government that he was engaged to Joycelyn Savage. The US government, who's portraying him as a predator. This is where she got her information that they were engaged, not her own client. I said, it's a fabrication, Jennifer. You know this. Why haven't you checked it with your client? I'll check it, she says. I'll check it. Did she ever check it? No. Did she ever correct it? No. Did she ever correct the mistakes? No. What she did was cut me off and block me. Now, if you don't think that's negligent and something corrupt and something absolutely immoral in her, there's something wrong in you to support this behavior. We have to get rid of this in our society. In the legal system, we cannot have these attorneys running rogue because they think that they can win a case by a fabricated story, meanwhile ruining real lives, putting King and I at huge amount of stress, under a huge amount of stress, because she refuses to do what's right. Because she keeps running it with this lie every time the media ask her. I heard her say, I'm sorry, that people don't like the fact he was in a relationship with Azrael Clary. She wasn't. And Jennifer Bonjean knows that King was never in a relationship with Azrael Clary. She knows it, and she knows it deeply. I've been in touch with her even ever since to communicate to King certain things. So don't even believe what you're seeing. Stop believing what you're seeing in these people outside of King and I. They don't have his best interests at heart. I don't know what their agenda is. Only God knows what happened in her brain to make her make those decisions that she did, that is going to lead her in trouble, maybe even lose her license. Because you cannot do this, and you cannot be this corrupt and not get caught out. Lies, those who lie are going to be caught. I've said it before. Those who lie are going to be caught. And it doesn't matter what level you're on of these lies. It doesn't matter what level of society you're on. If you lie, if you've lied in these cases, you're going to be caught. You're going to be caught, and you're going to be tried by your own peers or by a jury or by a judge. It doesn't matter. you're going to be caught. And it won't be by my hand, let me tell you. So let me just say that. But coming back to this Father Jackson, I have to tell you the story very briefly, because the story of Father Jackson was that he was guilty. They found all of these articles on his computer, and, of receiving and of distributing, by the way, which in none of this stuff they found on King's computers. All his iPads, hundreds of them, they confiscated. They don't want to tell that story. This isn't the propaganda of the truth that they wanted the media. You know what really nigged me about the US government during the cases? He was exercising his Fifth Amendment rights to remain silent and protect himself, but they were taking advantage of that because they knew they could have the media's ear. And how they did that is they started to put out this propaganda of, like little bits of the case. They didn't tell that story, did they? They didn't say what they found on all his technology from storage. What happened to all of that? Nothing was found. But on this fathers and all predators and all pedophiles, you'll never find a clean slate like King's. You won't. All these tapes that they lied that they found, there were no tapes. The government had 5 discs. What happened? What happened to all these so-called discs? It's just corruption to the max. And we're living in a world where people are corrupt, and no level of society is immune to this. I don't care who you are, what job you do, what title you hold, you're not immune to corruption. And you're not immune to being accused of corruption either. We the people have a right to actually have these answers. Why did you do this to a citizen of the United States when you're supposed to protect him? Why would you do this under the guise of justice and protecting the community? What were you trying to get from him that you couldn't get for yourself? Were you just like the surviving RKelly brand of characters, trying to move up in society by making him look guilty so then you could get promotion into DA, into a judge, or into a federal prosecutor or something? What is it that these people wanted from King, that they had to portray him as somebody he wasn't? These are the answers I want the people, the people, to come to, or to come to understanding. Because it's a problem that's going to keep happening, and if you switch off to it, it's going to affect everybody you know. It's going to affect everybody you know, because no longer will we have great music or musicians or entertainment, because all of them will be in jail or caught up in some trial or court case that was nothing to do with them, but some delusional person who just wants money. So we're not going to have entertainment. We're not going to have joy in our lives. We're not going to have fun in our lives. People are going to suspect everybody of being a pedophile and a predator, because because of these small number of criminals and corrupt individuals that need to portray innocent people as predatory and as who they are. So we need to fix this, because otherwise it's going to continue and none of us are going to have a good life. We're not going to be able to enjoy the things we enjoyed in our past, the movies we enjoyed, the music we enjoyed, the dance and entertainment we enjoyed. It's all going to be blocked. It's all going to be removed. It's all going to be tainted with this idea that they're connected to some conspiracy. So nobody's going to be able to listen to anything. Eventually, all we'll have is the crap that we've been listening to for these last number of years that people call music, but it just sounds and drums and beats and things that have nothing to do with music. I want people to understand that as much as you think it's not going to affect you, it's going to affect you personally. Each one of us has a responsibility to find out the truth and find the real corruption in our society so that we can fix this problem for our generation and future generations. Otherwise, we're going to be in trouble. We're not going to have the world that we enjoyed as children and that we enjoyed as teenagers. Our children are not going to enjoy the world, because they'll have nothing to go by. They're going to have all of this false victimhood. They're going to have all of that and nothing else. False victimhood, trauma that never ends. Like in cycles of trauma that never end. Consistently talking about traumas and being victims of people instead of talking about victory and what you've overcome, like King does, turning tragedy to triumph. These are things that are going to affect everybody. So when I talk for the whole of humanity to change, because all of us are going to be affected in our own different ways. So Father Jackson's story, he got caught, he was arrested, he was supported by his community. And I want to talk about that because they went all out for him, all out. And they did food drives for him, they did anything to support him. And you can find all of his support online, by the way, too. Huge amounts of support for this pedophile, sadistic father from this church. And what I learned from that is this: he eventually confessed to it. He pleaded guilty. And then he wrote, and had it just stopped there, I would have still said, okay, maybe he pled guilty, and we still need to look at why he pled guilty, because sometimes, as you know, the people that really follow these cases, law and crime, people plead guilty sometimes just because they've been given no option out. It's either 30 years or 10 or 5 years. And that's a reality too of our court systems. How this can happen, I don't understand, but it means that there are a lot of people in jail that are not guilty of the crimes that they've confessed to. But it's unfair and it's unjust. But he pled guilty, but he took it a step further. He wrote an apology letter. So that's when I said, okay, this man is really guilty. He himself has finally admitted it. And I didn't look into all his cases and all of that, but he admitted it, he confessed, but then he wrote an apology letter to his church members, to, the people that believed in him, the people that supported him, all of that. Do you know how long he was given, by the way? I want you guys to think about this for 1 second. Do you know how long his sentence was? You would never guess. It was 6 years. 6 years. That's what they gave him. A man who they found material on his computer of children being abused. He distributed and received. A man who first pled innocent and then pled guilty and then confessed and then wrote an apology letter. They gave him 6 years. This is the system we're dealing with here. And then you have King, who they found nothing. They found nothing. They had to twist stories from reality just to paint him as a predator of the people that were preying on him. They had to twist the story around. So he was the predator and not the victim. Just to win these cases, that's what they had to do. And then he received 30 years and added sentence, a small added sentence on top of that. A man is still fighting for, who was still, to this day, will stay his innocence and stand on a book of Bibles and God to say it to the whole world, because he hasn't done anything. So I want you all to think about that. That's where we're at in this world. This is where we're at in this system that's supposed to work, but it doesn't clearly work, because the real predators and the real pedophiles get 6 years. And by the way, some of that he's going to serve at home on probation. So he might even only serve 4 years. And I want you to think about that. This self-confessed predator will only, and then you think about Epstein, who confessed and ended up back on the streets. And here we are with King, who has nothing, an R&B icon and legend, with a horde of groupies all of his career, who never once you will find him on any real tape or video or anything, distributing, receiving any kind of child, anything. Who was a protector of women, who protected these women they turned against him for fame and money. I want people to think about that, and morally, but all ethically and legally, how we stand with all of these cases, and whether any of this is just and fair, and how we can change this as a society, because it's at the point where, yes, this video is meant to be about stalkers, and it has been. It's been about stalking and where it's led, to these cases. All of these so-called victims were once his stalkers. Not one of them came from a perspective of being just a normal person, living a healthy life, going about their business, just being a woman, had normal relationships. They were all chasing him from city to city, or not just him, other celebrities. How on earth do you paint somebody like King as their predator and not the other way around? These stalkers are predatory. Stalkers are predator. And some of them have even been charged for stalking other people, by the way. At least one person I know from surviving RKelly, one woman, is a convicted stalker. And still people don't want to accept reality. The reality they want to live in is this false reality where they will never catch the real predators, the real pedophiles, because that reality of King being a predator does not exist. It doesn't exist. It's not real. It's a made up fabrication by a lot of people for profit. And that's all it is. And everybody has something to gain in it. YouTubers have something to gain. The government has something to gain in it. His attorneys have something to gain in it. People have things to gain in this that they're not even telling the public. But everybody, he has been the golden goose. He has been the golden goose for everybody. How they can profit from him, everybody can profit. The YouTubers, the bloggers, they all can profit by posting RKelly stories that are fake and fabricated. And by not posting the truth, which has been on this channel for, 3 years I've been on this channel. 3 years. And I can't get people to listen because it's not salacious. It's not sadistic. It's not fake, and it's not false, and it's not lies. I can't get people to listen because it's the truth. And this is the problem we're facing in this world, is that the truth is becoming numbed down, but the crazy and the psychosis and the mob hysteria, that's being loud and noisy. So to the point where nobody wants to listen to the truth anymore. You know, the people that are the loudest are the ones that are getting the attention. The ones that are saying, look at me, I'm going to tag RKelly in my video, even though it has nothing to do with RKelly. And then you'll come here, I'm going to tag Aaliyah too. That will add extra benefit for you. I'm even going to put a photo that looks like him and Leah. And then I'm going to make up a story that it's true that they had a child together. And I'm going to draw people to my channel. And people do not care about being that corrupted and that predatory and that, and to being real pedophiles and ephebophiles. They don't care about that. You people don't care. A lot of you people don't care about watching these videos either and clicking onto there. But you won't spend time here because this is the truth. This is the truth that no one wants to hear. This is the truth that's going to drive you insane, and I'm going to keep saying it until you are insane, some of you, because I'm not going away. I'm going to keep telling the truth. I was brought up to tell the truth, and unfortunately that is my weakness, is telling the truth whether people like it or not. And I'll do it again and again. And I'm not somebody to name anybody. The only people that I name are the people I've actually dealt with in his cases, his attorneys I've dealt with. They can't ever sue me because nothing I've said is not what they've said in writing or to him. So whatever you're hearing from me, there's nothing I cannot back up. I'm not somebody who slanders anybody. I'm not here to slander anybody. I would never do that to somebody. I know what that feels like. But if somebody has done something corrupt, I'm going to tell you. And I'm going to tell you very clearly. And if you listen, it's up to you. If you don't listen, that's up to you. But it's to your benefit that you listen, because you might learn something for your own life that might protect you. Because every one of us is a target, or could be a target for some predatory person who has an evil agenda. And you could be walking down the street, you could be meeting a charming man or woman that you think you might have a love affair with or a relationship with, and they might turn out to be your worst nightmare. And they could bring evil into your life in a way that you never expected. So learn from this story. Learn from the stories I tell you, and learn from King's real story, this hidden truth that I've been talking about for longer than 3 years. We've been going on this for 5 years. I was on Twitter and Instagram before that, by the way. And some of you I don't know, some of you remember me then, but I couldn't really speak much on Twitter because I kept getting people harassing me and abusing me. And because the mayhem and hysteria against RKelly, the RKelly brand, was so intense at that stage. There was so much hatred in the air because these psychopaths and sociopaths had managed to arouse a crowd of the world with their fake documentary Surviving RKelly. The people hated him for no reason. They didn't even know why they hated him. They didn't even know why they thought he was guilty. All they heard was he was on this documentary. They saw this documentary. They heard something. They heard this story, and now he's a predator and pedophile. And that's all people got into their heads. They didn't do the due diligence of going to check on these stories and these characters that were making these claims. But unfortunately, what happened is you have the US government that put them under protection orders and their names covered. So you see how this is like not even a case of fairness in any sense. It was a case of protecting the real criminals so that their victim could be put in jail for 30 years and more. How is this okay in this world? How are we morally okay to do this to people or watch this to happen to people and not say anything and do something as a community of people? Why are we supporting still all the wrong people, all the wrong channels? Why are we not craving what is wholesome and real and godly and loving and kind and compassionate and good for all of us? Why would anybody be able to make any kind of documentary without properly doing all the checks that they're meant to make, as a real journalist would make? Background checks, mental health checks, relational checks. It's beyond me, the levels of this, levels of corruption, the levels of immorality, the levels of real predatory behavior, sociopathic behavior. It blows my mind how big this is, because I think that, the problem is King's case, is going to set a huge new precedent when he's home. And this is the scary thing for a lot of people. So the way that people are invested in him staying there and this continuing so that they don't get found out for all their corruption, I can't explain it to you guys. Thank God we have God, honestly, because if it was left to us as human beings, we would already all be gone, because we don't have a single sense in the world. None of us have like a moral compass to stop us from doing this to each other, because we're like sheep. We follow each other like sheep. It doesn't matter how smart you are, how intelligent, how educated. You will find someone to follow that you will follow blindly and without question. You will. I promise you, in your life, you're going to do this. And one day you'll wake up and go, how did I believe in that person? Because you're a sheep. And because without God, that's what happens. If you don't have God, and I promise you, if you guys don't get your connection with God right, and I'm not talking about this wishy-washy religious philosophy of, just praise God and, and exchanging these beautiful like blessings. I'm talking about really understanding God's character. I'm talking about really being aware of God in every moment of your life, aware of God's presence and a fear of God, a fear of that, because God is watching even this conversation. And, I don't know how people can even, think that God's not going to come back around and get them. And I mean, God is not a God of hate. God is not a God of hate, of cruelty, but God is a God of justice. And God will come back around and get you. No matter how much you hide under the bed or in your cupboard. If you fly to the planet Mars, God is still there. God's still going to get you. I don't know where these people are going to hide from, because they're not going to be able to hide for long or from God. They might be able to be covered over by the government and other people that are corrupt. And I'm not saying that everybody in the US government is corrupt. I'm not saying that at all. Because had that been the case, we would not be in the position to bring King home. Because I did find people, I believe, with all my heart, are going to do the right thing, because that is their agenda. But I think that as for the rest, I questionable, because, if you're, like I was saying in my comments, if you're a pedophile, if you're a real pedophile, not the make-believe pedophile that they want the public to believe that King is, but a real pedophile, you're going to put yourself around children, wherever you can find children. You're not going to put yourself mostly in the music industry where they're adults. You're not really. You're going to actually go and, like become a teacher. You're going to become, a nurse. You're going to become somebody who can access children. That's what real pedophiles do. That's what we all know they do. And not to say that, obviously that people in the music industry can't be, like predators as well. It can happen anywhere. I've said this all the time. But I'm going to say this, like statistically, it's just not, it doesn't add up. The number of predators and pedophiles in the music industry does not add up to the ground. People in the community, uncles, aunties, cousins, teachers, whatever, teachers, preachers, all of that. They're the pedophiles that you're hearing about in your community, but they're not going after them. They're going after the targets where they can become famous. This is a problem. So we've got a number of issues we've got to address here as a community, as a world. We cannot continue the way we're going. We cannot eat each other up, on the basis of survival. This world we weren't made to be here just to impress each other. I mean, to try to harm others just to impress, which is really what fame is about getting that validation and attention from people. It's one thing to be famous because you're gifted, and people really appreciate that gift as something special and God-given and God-driven. But it's another thing to be famous because you want to be famous just because you exist, just because you look a certain way in your youth, because you have a few enhancements, and that kind of works for you as well. This is not why we're here. We're not here to impress each other. We're here to impress God. If people can't get that, we're here to impress God, not other human beings that are equally fallible, that are equally weak, and really don't even matter. And as for money, do you think for 1 second that any level of money could give you the happiness and joy that God could give you? It's a fallacy. It's a fake and fraudulent fallacy that people keep telling people that extreme amounts of wealth are going to make you the happiest person you won't be happier because you're not happy now. You're going to take exactly who you are, and you're just going to have more money with it. And in fact, you're not going to keep that money because you're an unhappy person, or you'll have it and you'll use it for horrible things and to put poison out into the world. And in which case, eventually that that success, whatever success that you have, will come crumbling down. It won't last 30 plus years like King's has, and continuing on. King's success and longevity is proof that he has done the right thing by so many people who did him wrong. And that's the proof that he is a good person to me and to the world as well. His longevity in the public sphere, in fame, and we're not talking about some corporation where you can hide. We're not talking about a corporation where you can threaten people's lives. We're not talking about NDAs that silence people from telling fake stories, which is what NDAs are. They're not an NDA is not to protect the celebrity from real stories. It's to protect the celebrity from fake stories. But they want to twist it and say an NDA now, celebrities shouldn't be asking for NDAs. They want to strip celebrities of any kind of protection that they have. NDAs of even if they try to avoid a court hearing by just giving people the money that they're asking for. Now they're accused of paying people off. It's just just stop it. Just stop it. I understand that people hate people in power, in celebrities. I understand that there is a natural love-hate relationship there with society where people love and adore celebrities, but they also hate them because they have all this success, money, fame, and attention. They have women, they have all of this that other people don't have. I get it. For the normal person who's bitter, twisted, and jealous, it can become a thing of obsession to destroy them all. But, unfortunately, trying to paint them as some kind of criminal mob member or mob gangster member or trafficker in order to ease your own jealousy and envy and lack of righteousness isn't going to work under God's watch. Eventually, things are going to come back around and things are going to be corrected which is, I think, what God is trying to do through King's story, is trying to correct things. So the world comes back to where it should be, where things are normal again. Because once upon a time, we had a normal perspective of celebrities. Yes, we had fanatical fans, but people weren't looking at celebrities like criminals, and all of Hollywood as a pedophile ring. These stories are really, really corrupted. I'm not saying that there aren't pedophiles in Hollywood, but you can't put music, the music industry as part of Hollywood. The music industry is a separate thing. They're not dealing with children most of the time. Most of the time, these celebrities were children when they came in, or they were young people. All you can count. I made a list privately of all the musicians that became famous and their age. Most of them became famous from 11 years old. The Taylor Swifts, the Justin Biebers, the Aaliyahs. It's not new. Even King was very young when he became, famous. He may not have been a teen, but, that's ideally where they wanted to start people, in that teenage year, so then they could have a long career. So, these are realities we have to face about our life, about our world, and we have to have these conversations with each other as well. I encourage really wholesome conversations like this amongst people, and for people to correct people and not to be afraid to have these conversations, especially with people that are against King, or against, the people that are accused, because people are scared to talk about child abuse. People are scared to be seen as an apologist for rapists and abusers. But the thing about it is, let's talk about the cases. Forget about like the charges. Let's talk about the cases and the reality of the cases. If you don't want to talk about child abuse in regards to these people, talk about the cases then. Talk about the evidence then. But talk about it in a real form of like common sense. Does this make common sense, what you're seeing and hearing? And I'm going to end there, because I'm just, I've got something to do. But yeah, so I mean, I came on here to tell the story of stalking, and I think I talked about, the relational stalker, like somebody who's calling themselves a King relative. Then there's a person who's obviously the Don Russell character, who tries to relate to King as an associate, and that's another type of stalker who is trying to portray an associate of King, and they'll use any kind of communication with King as their little pull-in card to bring people in to watch their channels or to follow them, and also to get connected with the celebrity. They'll use a history with the celebrity, anything. Then you've got the supporter stalker, who, or the erotomaniac, who will just hang around, or obsessed person, who will just hang around as a supporter and try to be the best supporter that the celebrity has ever seen or met. And they too are also mentally unwell. All of these people, these characters, you've got to start to see the pattern of how they behave around celebrities, and not just King, but other celebrities. Are they obsessively talking about other celebrities? Are they kind of like, or do they keep themselves pretty grounded? Do they have normal relationships? Or is their life all about the celebrities and celebrity worship? Like, that's a case for possible disorders. And if you're somebody who struggles with all of this, by the way, and you're genuinely having a hard time with, like, not looking at celebrities like your next lover, your next love interest, your next husband or wife, then I really encourage you to get the help you need, because the thing about it is, it could destroy your life. It could lead to you being in prison at some stage for stalking, for this obsession, for making up lies that he hurt you. Must I continue? So it can end you up in a lot of trouble. You can get tangled up in a web of other kinds of obsessive behavior that ends up destroying your life, your mental health, and your future prospects of even having a normal relationship. Because even in a normal relationship, you're still going to be obsessing over a celebrity who who you don't know, you haven't met, and even if you've met them once or twice, they're still not your friend. Like I heard, I think in Precedence, the documentary, that little documentary that we featured Azrael, I heard her mention King as actually, no. It was in the court, the letter she wrote to her brother, and she said that she became friends with King. Let me just make this clear. Azrael and King were never friends. She was she was his intern. They didn't share secrets, they didn't share stories about life, he didn't share, family secret. He didn't share anything with Azrael that was of personal or intimate nature. They didn't share a kiss, they didn't share a bed, they didn't share anything, they didn't share a home. And I want that to be clear. Let the evidence show that there was no home sharing, no living situation. The attorneys lied through their teeth that they were there when he was arrested. They came back after he was arrested, and they were put in his condo by people. But they were at home. You can look up the TMZ records and all the other records of the media and their spottings. They were at home when King was arrested. We had sent them home that May. So they were at home. They snuck back in, begging and pleading to come back through his people, through the people around King. That's how they were let into his condo for the first time in their life. They'd never lived in his condo. So they were squatting there, and I want that to be clear. These are things that people have twisted and have misled the public. There was no live-in situation with them. And Azrael wasn't King's friend. She was nothing. She was to me, in my personal view, a complete erotomaniac. Completely delusional about her association with King, to the point where it did become, in her mind, real pain and real trauma when she found out that he had a girlfriend, me. And unfortunately, some of you have interviewed some of these obsessed stalkers that I've kind of listed off, and I'm not mentioning names, have interfered to the point where they've been able to convince King to pursue this path of chasing this story that Azrael flipped because of Joycelyn Savage and some emails. It's not true. Azrael flipped because she heard about me. It's not true. So I want the record to show that these obsessed people, these obsessive stalkerish people that have been hounding King, letters and letters and letters, and trying to get his email and get him on email from some association that they might have, any kind of association, have convinced him that Azrael flipped against him because of certain emails. But you've got to understand, Azrael and Joycelyn knew each other very closely. They were intimately connected. Those two were intimately connected, not King and them. Okay, so they were intimately connected. They shared their secrets. You think that Joycelyn and Azrael both didn't know that they weren't his girlfriends and weren't his lovers? Of course they knew. So of course, why would Azrael be jealous of emails that were not real, that were not, the content was not real? That's what I want you guys to understand. The content of the emails were not real. And Azrael knew what King was doing because she had been there before, and she knew that they weren't girlfriend and boyfriend. She knew that they came back after his arrest and landed back in his condo because his attorneys had this scheme to portray them as his living girlfriends for the sake of a defense. These are things no one's going to tell you because nobody knows except for me and King and I. And unfortunately, King cannot talk because he's blocked by his silence, by his need to protect himself for legal reasons. But I can communicate this because this is the truth. This is a truth that people need to be aware of. I keep saying it and repeating it. And the thing about the truth never changes. You can ask me to tell this story backwards, and I can tell it even in another language if you want, because it doesn't change. Now ask them to flip the switch and ask Azrael to tell the story of how she knew King and how their relationship. She can't even remember anything about him. She doesn't know anything about King. Azrael and Joycelyn know nothing about him except that he's RKelly. They got to spend momentary moments with him as interns, but they know nothing about his life, nothing. They don't know his relatives, they don't know his family, they don't know anything about his story. They were not his friends, they weren't his lovers, they weren't anything to do with him. And this is the reality of it. It was all concocted, and it has damaged King's freedom in a way that I cannot explain to you. And the way that people keep spinning this story because they want views, stop it. If you're listening to this and you're one of these obsessed people that need to keep spinning this story around and looking at the transcripts and analyzing how, Azrael's parents did this and that, I've already told you the truth. You're listening to it right now. You can accept it or you can keep going on your deluded path that there was some other story that hasn't been told or some other story that these attorneys have told and I'm not telling. It's just not true. If you don't want to accept reality, that's fine, but this is just not true. The reality is they were interns. There was no live-in situation. The records show that they had their own apartment. They lived at the studio beforehand. There was no live-in situation. There was no romantic situation. Joycelyn Savage is on tape saying it, that she lied about it to her family. This is what caught King out because she lied to her family. So she is as criminal as Azrael. The only difference is Joycelyn Savage didn't take it that step further. And that's for her own good that she didn't go and join the hordes of fakes and frauds, because at least she has some hope for some kind of future. But I can't say the same for RKelly because she has committed perjury. She has committed all kinds of crimes in the name of revenge because she couldn't be his girlfriend and she couldn't be his lover and she couldn't be his wife. Like in her deluded mind, her erotomaniac mind, she wanted to be. And her parents had convinced her of this so much that by the time it didn't happen, she couldn't deal with it, the shame and humiliation, because you have to see the time frame. She was okay with those letters she wrote saying, I've fallen in love with him, but he's not interested. I've hinted at having sex with him and he's not interested. He's shown no interest in me. And she's writing to her brother. This was presented in court much later after the first meeting. Why people can't put the timelines together of this, I cannot understand. You're not all stupid people, I'm sure of it. And I know I'm going on, but I just want you to understand the timeline of that first meeting and that transcript where she's writing her brother and saying he's not interested no matter what I do. At that time, nobody even knew that they were interning. So they were nobodies. So there was no shame in the game of her being rejected. But at the time when Greenberg hatched up that plan or whatever he did that made him go to the media and say that these women were his live-in girlfriends, that is what made her start to switch. So if anybody's responsible for Azrael flipping on him, it should be his own attorneys. I'm just telling you the truth here. They should be responsible, Bonjean included now, because she keeps putting out this story that's fake and fraudulent. But Greenberg, because he put it in her head that this was a possibility, because by framing her to the public that she was his girlfriend and the public accepting this narrative, it set her up for failure because she was already in love with him. He'd already rejected her a million times, was not interested, was in a relationship with me. It was never going to happen. So when she kept hounding him to have a relationship and to be with her intimately, and even in prison, he was doing the same thing, and then it didn't happen. Of course she's going to flip because now the public know about it. If you're like a sociopath, if you're somebody who's not mentally balanced and mentally well, then that's what's going to happen. You're going to be vulnerable to suggestion. You're going to be vulnerable and susceptible to people's suggestion that you might be in a relationship. You could be, even if it's not real. And that's the problem here, is that the suggestion that he was with her was enough for her to run with, because the public then started calling her his girlfriend. Oh, you're RKelly's girlfriend. It's really great that you're supporting him. Meanwhile, she's not. Meanwhile, she knows she's not. And she doesn't have a clue what's going to happen next. That's when I come in. I contact Azrael privately and I say, RKelly, I said, you don't know me. I have not met you, but this is the situation here. I'm RKelly's girlfriend and partner. We've been together this long. We were friends before then. I was the one that had you and Joycelyn Savage. It was my influence, me and King and I's decision to have you guys sent home. And that was at this time. So I couldn't have known these dates if I wasn't who I said I was. These are the things I said to RKelly. And this is the first time some of you are hearing this. But these are my exact words to her. I said, I want you to stop portraying yourself as his girlfriend because it's fake, it's fraudulent, and it's lies. And you know this. She stopped doing that, but what she ended up doing almost a few days later was becoming his enemy, his biggest enemy, and making up a whole fabricated story of abuse, of shoes, of feces, of all of that stuff. And that was literally, I think, even 2 days after my communication with her. I knew the risk I was taking. I knew the risk I was taking in contacting her, but I also knew, just like pulling out a tooth. And King was afraid to death about that, about her finding out about me, because King knew that Azrael was volatile. King knew that Azrael was volatile and was ready to set off at any stage that she was rejected, because she was so sociopathic. She wanted all this attention on her, and she wanted King to she used the situation King was in prison, to her own selfish benefit. That's how evil she was. Instead of like thinking, how can I help in telling the truth that I was his intern and I was just not his lover and I'm not his girlfriend, how can I help that way? She's thinking, oh, well, now that I've got you where I want you, and you've got to actually give to me because you're forced to. Because if you don't, then the only two options you have are that I'll turn against you, one, or you can stay in prison, two. She was the biggest manipulator you could ever ask for in life, because she knew exactly the position she was in and he was in. So you want to talk about victim here? There's no victim in RKelly. She's a predatory, manipulative character and a dangerous person, because that's how she was raised. She was raised to be this woman. From the time she was young, she was raised to think this way. And it was only flipped on as a switch when she was rejected by him publicly. And her rejection came in knowing about me. When I contacted her to tell her about me, and I gave her the dates of when we moved them out, when they had to go home, so she couldn't deny it. Who else knew except her, Joycelyn, and King, that they'd been sent home? It was me, because it was my initial idea. And I said to King, when we got together, this cannot go on with them, like people thinking that you're, because of Greenberg, thinking that you might be attached to these women. You've got to send them home. They are in love with you. It's going to end up really bad for you. I said, we have got to, and it's also bad for them. How are they going to move on in life if they still are hanging on to hope that something might one day happen with you? Send them home. Get them away from you and away from us. This energy is not good. These are things I said to him that people have never ever heard me say. But he put King and I in a different room, and we'll have the exact same story. That's the difference between Azrael and King. Different story. She can't even remember the story she wants to tell. She was in court telling all kinds of lies that she couldn't even remember the lies she was told to tell, and she was trained to tell, and she was coached to tell, and that she spent 6 months, like not even 6 months, I can't remember how long it was, practicing. She couldn't remember any of it. And that's why, there was talk of her being impeached. Because she's a fraud, and she's a fake, and she's a phony, and she's a manipulative character that should be in prison. She shouldn't be having 200,000 followers that keep telling her, oh, it's so great that you've done so well since you've been, released from RKelly's grip. No, this is a woman who's very predatory and dangerous and harmful to people. She's a thief. She's concocting stories left, right, and center for her own benefit. But that's all she knows. And that's all I can say. Excuse me, I just had like a bad cough. But yeah, if you ran this tape back, there's a lot of like gems in here that you've not heard before. So I encourage you to listen closely. I always drop things that I've never said before. And I think I do it timely, because, I couldn't reveal all this stuff when I first came online because no one was going to accept it. And at the same time, it was just, I was up against Greenberg, his attorney, King having no voice at all. And he's the only person who could validate everything I was saying. In my last live, I was... Sorry. In my last live, I was actually I was telling the story of how King was actually going to call and try and validate my story. And that was through a certain blogger, by the way. It was, I think, January 2022, it could have been. Yeah, I think it was January. I've got to go back and have a look at the video that I made about it. I know it was a while ago, but this was in the early stages when I first came online, because I was finding it quite frustrating to get to people and to get through to people and for people to listen. And the only reason why I don't do this for attention, and I don't want people to be swayed over to my side. I just want people to be swayed over to the truth, and in that, to see how innocent King really is. Because when you start continuing continuing twisting, telling this story the wrong way about Azrael and Joycelyn and him, then then you get all of his story wrong. The Azrael, Joycelyn, and RKelly story has to be told over and over again until people get the truth and understand and accept the truth, because it affects all the other stories. Because by the assumptions that have been made about him and Azrael and Joycelyn, you could easily then extend that to, well, if he can have Azrael and Joycelyn as his girlfriends, and of course he could have Aaliyah as his girlfriend too, and of course then he can be predatory with other women as well, underage women, and of course that's his preference. Do you see how far people can then extend that story into other non-truths? And you see why I've kept repeating the truth over and over again. And people might think I'm obsessed with the story, but it's my story too, because it's being told the wrong way, and it's leaving out the main character, the second main character, which is me. And when you leave out me or myself, then you leave out the most important aspect of all of this, that discredits everything, discredits all of the assumptions of him. Because when you understand he was never with Azrael and Joycelyn Savage, you understand that was never his preference. Because had he been into underage women, he was around them for years. They were hounding him for years to have a relationship with him. They were obsessive with him. They were in love with him. If he was into that, he would have been with them. But instead, he was with me. And I'm 47. I turned 48 this year. So instead, he fell in love with me. I was his preference. I was his preference. So it debunks all of the assumptions. The truth debunks the assumptions. So when you hear me continuing to tell that story of Azrael and Joycelyn until people hear it over and over again and they get it in their minds, the truth, it's because it debunks all of the rumors, it debunks all of the stories and the assumptions about him. And even the people that say they are his fans and supporters continue to tell this story wrong. And I think some of them intended as well, because I think that, it keeps giving them attention for their channels or for whatever they're doing, but also because, I think they want us, they've been kind of putting Joycelyn and Azrael on some kind of pedestal as his girlfriends instead of the ones that actually led him into this situation. Because let's be clear about the timeline of all of these things happening. You have Joycelyn Savage and Azrael Clary lying behind King's back that they are with him, they're in a relationship with him and they're intimate with him, lying to their family members and close associates, misleading people behind his back. You have King, who has no idea about this. He has 2 interns that he thinks, oh, they're over there, they're good, they're happy, like just to intern and hang out with me and learn about what I do and just be around and and help out with bookings and help out with the small jobs that I give them. And so you've got King in that mindset. You've got them lying behind his back. This is before surviving RKelly, by the way. Then you have King finding out that they're lying, but it's too late, because now you've got these sociopathic parents, personality types, that wanted their daughters to be in a relationship with RKelly. That was their whole objective. They never hid that in their text messages, in their messages with their daughters, in their little words that they never said. There's a video of Timothy Savage sitting down with Joycelyn, and it's very telling, because she's in that video is where she starts lying. She just gives him this kind of impression that there's something going on, because she comes home to see her family who are expecting news about RKelly. And of course, the kind of news they're expecting is they're hoping that she hit a home run. And you know what I mean by a home run. And, so they've got her at home and they set her down and they're asking her questions in front of a camera, by the way, in front of a camera. Who does this? Which kind of parentage sits down their child and starts interrogating, looking for clues as to whether she's actually reached her goal, the goal that they wanted her to reach, which was being his girlfriend and being his lover. So now they've got her sat down and Timothy Savage is asking her questions. And you have Joycelyn Savage portraying and alluding to things happening. You have Timothy Savage trying to hide his smile and his pleasure and his happiness at hearing this from his daughter. Instead of his distaste, instead of his disapproval, instead of sitting down and saying, this isn't what we wanted from you, Joycelyn. We didn't want anything. We sent you there to learn about music. No. That's not what you get from Timothy Savage. You get a sly smile on screen. Now, you guys can find this video online. Some of the bloggers that posted it, though, I think have long gone. I think the blogger could have been Toxic Diamond. I think I saw it on her channel. So now this is what triggered a series of events. This Joycelyn Savage incident where she's alluding to things happening that are not happening, by the way, triggered a series of events because now in Timothy Savage's mind, he has the collateral to then start trying to extort and blackmail King. So you see how what she's already calls, just by her lack of her honesty, lack of integrity, lack of truthfulness. So she's already caused her father to start planning and scheming how she can get King, how he can get King, or how he can get to King's money. So now he starts to contact King and say, well, now you have my daughter, give us money in different ways. Of course it's support this dodgy business. So of course it's, they weren't straight out about it. Let's put it that way. They tried to, allude to different things. And King was like, no, I'm not doing it. And of course that no was enough to trigger this sociopathic smear campaign that then followed, and blackmail campaign, which is, well, you've been with my daughter, and now if you don't do what we ask, if you don't give us money and support us financially, then we will spread rumors about you keeping her hostage. And of course, by this time now they're in connection, I think, with the Clarys. So now it's become, these four parents. And you've got Azrael also lying behind King's back, saying to friends or like hinting for clout that something was going on. And it wasn't. So all of this was made up. And then by the time King finds out, it's like, what can I do about it? He gets Joycelyn Savage on a video, on a recording, saying that she lied. And this is, she lied to her parents about something going on. Now, this was obviously ended up in Timothy Savage's hands, and I think King was obviously wanting to use it to prove to, her father, who was saying, no, you've been with my daughter, you've been abusing, and, you've been because it's what he did. He twisted the realities, he twisted the story, because that's what sociopathic people do, is they make it sound like you're the one that's predatory, you're the one that's the pedophile, you're the one that's the abuser. So now Timothy Savage is like, no, she told me on tape, I've got it, that something was going on with you two. I'm summarizing, by the way, so a lot of this is like, don't take it, word for word. I'm just summarizing what happened. So then you've got, King hearing this and saying, okay, what can I do? He gets Joycelyn Savage on a recording confessing to lying. Because if Timothy Savage has this tape of her sitting down and lying and saying that something was happening, then what could King do not retaliation, but to protect himself, is have a recording of Joycelyn Savage saying, I lied to my parents that something was going on. So now King has this and gives it to Timothy Savage, or like presents it to him. Timothy Savage, being the corrupted character he is, takes it to the bloggers. because he's not a true, he doesn't have an ounce of truth in him. He doesn't know what the word truth means. You know, if you find the face for lies, you'll find his face and the Clary's face, because that's what they are. They're liars, and they're corrupted, deeply deprived individuals and dark individuals, very dark personalities. They took it to the bloggers, and he presented it as that King was trying to get Joyce and Savage to cover up for him, for the exploitation. That recording meant the other. He twisted the recording to mean the opposite. So when you hear the recording, it has Joycelyn saying, "I lied to my family about me and you. I lied to my parents about." That something was going on with me and you, or something like that. That's what the recording. I've got it on in my list of videos, by the way. You can just go and have a look at it and listen to it. So it can be interpreted in two ways when you hear it. And of course, the sociopath's going to take that and run with it, because then he went to the bloggers and said, "RKelly's exploiting my daughter, and he's getting her to say things and to lie to us. Now she's lying that he's not exploiting that." Now he's got her covering up for him. This is how it started. This is the chain of the smear campaign, and this is before surviving RKelly. So now he's got the bloggers' ears, and of course the bloggers have the public's ear. And of course, he's talking to Tasha K as well. He's not just talking to, the smaller bloggers. He's doing the rounds, because that's what smear campaigners do. And he's taking this video and his fake evidence appearing real, and smearing King as being exploitive of Joycelyn Savage and Azrael Clary, and holding them in some kind of sexual exploitation and sexual entrapment and sexual cult. These are the wording he's using. And TMZ, he goes to TMZ anywhere and then of course Angelo Clary comes on board as well, because he too can't get any money from King, no matter what, or from his daughter, no matter what he tried. So now they're doing the rounds together. They're doing TMZ, they're doing Tasha K, and they're going backwards and forwards, because they were the two leading, I guess, gossip celebrity bloggers at the time that were rising up at the time, TMZ and Tasha K. And so, so then you've got all of that going on. And I think at that stage, you see how things have now spiraled out of control, because you've got TMZ saying alleged sex, what do they call them? There's a word that there's a term that TMZ were using. I saved it actually, because there's something we have to address later on, but they're calling sex slaves. That's right. They're saying calling Joycelyn Savage alleged sex slaves, because of the Savage and the Clary families who were going to TMZ and Tasha K and spreading this slander. So they're putting this out there, and then you've got Tasha K putting it out there, and then bloggers, they're going to bloggers and appearing on bloggers. Meanwhile, King is quiet, dead quiet, because he's like, this is going to all blow over. This is not going to go anywhere. I've done nothing. People are going to use their common sense. But of course, they didn't. So then you've got Azrael and Clary still, living. At the time, they were at the studio. They weren't living with King. You have to remember this. Every time I say this, they were never living with King. They didn't live with him then, and they're still not living with him now. So, I think that it's been just a level of narcissistic lies that end up being King's problem at the end of the day, because he allowed the wrong characters in his life. He trusted the wrong people. When he met these families, he thought that they were genuine Black families that just wanted a bright future for their daughters in the music industry. He was not looking at these daughters as potential girlfriends at all. Now, as they were getting older and they were hounding him for a relationship and a sexual something, that didn't change. Nothing changed in King. So he kept his integrity. He's if he had been interested in that, something would have happened, but nothing happened. So by getting his story right, you actually understand his character. So all of the context of, this idea that he's into underage women or much younger women. when you realize that during that time, me and King were friends, we're building up a very strong friendship. And I'm not going to tell you the details of all the details of how we met and all of that, because of course that's going to be our story for when and if we decide to tell that story. But I will say that there's a lot of supernatural stuff, by the way. There's a lot of mystical God and angel stuff involved in that, because I could not have planned that meeting. I could not have planned falling in love with him if I tried. But I think that obviously it was God's plan all along, because I didn't orchestrate anything. I didn't force anything. I didn't go looking for him. I didn't even, at that time, even though I'd been a fan of King's music for years, I was not even following his story at the time. So that's where I was at. But I think that when all of this was happening, and unknown to me, by the way, that all of this was happening behind the scenes, because of course when you're building a friendship with somebody, they're not going to tell you everything all at once. But I of course found out this was going on, and I started to just give him some advice as a friend, and just we used to and I would help him, like, in terms of as much as I could, like from where I was at the position I was in, which is as a friend at the time. But things were evolving with us very rapidly. So now you've got to understand, if his preference was much younger women, as the collective seemed to think, on both sides, by the way, because you've got people on this side saying there's nothing, as long as they're legal, there's nothing wrong with it. Okay, fine, but that's not his preference. It's still not his preference. He has been with much younger women. That's just still not his preference. He's been with legal women of age, but younger. That's still not his preference. I'm 10 years younger. It doesn't mean that's, his preference. I'm mature. I'm 47. So it's like, I'm just trying to debunk these stories because it's not his character. The storyline of him and these interns, it's not his character. It's what both sides of the fence have kind of conjured up for their own agenda, and it's hurting him. It's hurting his reputation in ways I can't even describe to you, because people are running with this everywhere. That was his girlfriend. No, RKelly wasn't his girlfriend. I can't keep saying it. Wasn't his lover, wasn't his girlfriend, wasn't his friend. Joycelyn Savage never was his lover, never was his friend. They don't know a thing about RKelly, apart from the music, apart from what they experienced on tour with him, and of course making his bookings and such. That's all they know about this man. That's all you should know about somebody who you work for. So let's be clear about that. You sit them down, you ask them anything personal. This is what I think made Azrael crack in the end, because she realized that her reality came crashing down, that she had no hope there. She was not his preference, like her parents had misled her to believe. And she wasn't as amazing as she thought she was. And there was nothing that was ever going to happen there with him. That to hear that he was with a mature woman, and I told her my age at the time, but of course she's not going to tell anybody. Who is she going to tell? Her family, who she's already lied to and misled herself? Because it's not just going on, like, it's not just her family that are misleading the public. You think that Azrael wasn't lying to her family as well, up until the end, up until this point? She has them deluded in these abuse stories because she is a narcissist. She is a sociopath, and she doesn't care. And so she will mislead her family into believing that there was a relationship there. So they'll defend her to the ends of the earth, because to believe that RKelly slept with their daughter, of course they believe it, because they're narcissistic. They have delusions of grandeur, and they think that they're capable of bagging a man like RKelly. That's how they think. And unfortunately, so do some of you. So do some of you put King on that level of petty, of dark-natured people. Even as supporters, you still don't see the level of person he is. You don't see that he does have standards, and he does have an ability to choose for himself, and that he's not who you possibly even thought for years he could have been. That Aaliyah story being put out there as truth, especially after surviving RKelly, being conjured up by people that had an evil agenda, saying that they'd seen him, and it never happened. Aaliyah was always with her family, always on tour with her parents. So there was no chance of there being a relationship. The end result of that artificial marriage that was annulled immediately, and where they didn't even like leave together. And that was all in the court transcripts. You can go and have a look at it. I'm not making all of these up. If there was a relationship, they would have gone off together and ridden into the sunshine. There was nothing. They went home separate ways, and he annulled it immediately. So it's like, look at the context of everything, but also look at the situation he was in at the time. If he was trying to be exploitive of Aaliyah, he would have gone home, taken her home. He had every legal right. He didn't. If he was exploitive and if he was into that, he would have taken Aaliyah home with him. He didn't. They went their separate ways, and Aaliyah was obviously not very happy with the outcome of that. There's some speculation about that from what she has said to, like, this Dame Dash character, who to me is not a very good person. But like, there's some, like, to me, speculation that she may have said some things to him that indicate she wasn't happy that that King didn't take her home with him, and didn't continue on with that fake marriage and make it real. Because I think that a woman who's been, like, I guess, jilted, even a young woman, can start to get very bitter. And then, when you talk about somebody, like, especially when you're younger and you don't have the wisdom of age to talk about relationships, sometimes you can say, oh, that person was a jerk. He was, hate him, or all of that. And really, you really didn't hate the person, but it's just that you felt betrayed. And as to whether Aaliyah today would have joined the circus of accusers, no one would know. No one can tell, because you don't know where Aaliyah's career would be today had she, unfortunately, like, not passed away. Because unfortunately, we do, like, she was a star. She had a gift. She had a specialness. Aaliyah was a very special person, like, and she had that special star quality. But we're not to know who she would have become later on in life. And we have to leave room for that. So for people to speculate that she was a victim and she would claim victimhood it's taking liberties that no one has a right to take for her, because she can't speak for herself. Her family tried to speak for her after the documentary hit. They tried to say all of those things that people were saying were lies. They weren't trying to protect themselves. I mean, maybe there was some part of that could have been, but I can't talk for their family members, but they were talking as much as they could for their daughter, who couldn't talk for herself, and they said that what people said were lies. And I hope I haven't disrespected her legacy by speaking out of line, and what happened, because I've tried not to speak for what she was thinking and feeling, only what I know as truth. And what I know as truth is that there was no relationship there. It was just a fabrication. But even the evidence out there, you can dig up the interviews of Barry Hankerson's, I believe it's son, who was on interviews saying that no one would work with Aaliyah initially. They had to put her with RKelly, with King, in order for them to work with her. They had to put them together. They had to make it so that people accepted her as mature, because, yes, her age was an obstacle for people to listen to her music in the hip hop and R&B world. And you had to understand that Barry Hankerson was also King's management team, and also, his label. So he was King's boss. And in effect, King didn't have much of a say in who he was encouraged to work with back then. And King spent 10 months, at least 10 months, praying and hoping to be signed with him. So you have all of that as well. You have, this young man who himself was at the time 26, so it's not like he was 30, 40 or 56 years old, like, that they want you to think. They want you to imagine this 56-year-old with a, getting into this fake marriage with a 16-year-old or 15-year-old going on 16. but they don't want to give you the context of what happened, and they don't want to tell you that King was 26 at the time and very naive and working for Barry Hankinson as, you know, under his leadership, under his mentorship, under his label, and Aaliyah was Barry's niece. And that is a very important part of this, because there was no way that he was not going to make sure she was not successful at all costs, including King. So the sacrifice was King. The sacrifice, in my view, was King. And Barry put his niece's success above King's, his niece's reputation above King's. So it was all about making her be marketable, her be acceptable to the public. And so you have that situation where, you know, and it worked because Aaliyah became a huge hit because of her association with King at the time. At the time, people accepted it as a real kind of people didn't quite understand what was going on, because it was not like, no one had actually said that they were in a relationship. I never remember thinking for 1 second back then in those days that I believed that they were in a relationship, because we knew back then that there were a lot of celebrities that would align themselves with other celebrities in the public sphere, for promotional reasons only. There was a lot of that going on. People would make appearances with people that they were making movies with, and they would be holding hands because they were making romantic movies together. So they wanted people to believe in the storyline of this romance and buy into it. So then you have Aaliyah, who's 15 and who's making adult level music, or music for an adult audience, and she needs to be sold in that sense. So you have Barry, who's her marketing manager, marketing everything, her uncle, and the one who had the most to gain from it, you know. And so he wanted to promote Aaliyah as a mature woman, and that's the cost, was get her looking like RKelly's wife, partner, what, you know, girlfriend, make it look like that in his deviant mind. And in King's mind, King's just thinking, wow, she's really talented. I'll do anything to help her. He could see the purity of Aaliyah's heart. They had a really good musical bond, and they had a really good musical magic together. I think when they worked together, they came up with a great album. And so you have all of that in King's innocence and naivety, because he comes from, you know, look, not everybody's the same. Not everybody was raised and they went into the world and they saw the world as the evil world it is, and people that are predatory. King wasn't like that. He didn't go out into the world and think, you know, the world is going to prey on me as a star. He wasn't thinking on those lines. He's thinking and trusting in Barry and his leadership and all of the things that they were doing, you know, sending them off to interviews together, like in matching outfits and things, to kind of sell this image and persona of Aaliyah being mature. You know, meanwhile, nothing is happening. There's nothing. It's just this marketing, promotional. It's for promotional reasons. But people have taken it out of context because they want to take it out of context, because then it fits their narrative that they've already assumed. And once you make that narrative and you have that assumption in your head, you have to find the evidence to fit it. And anything else you hear that goes outside of the evidence, outside of your narrative, you push it aside. So all of the things I'm saying today on this live, people are going to push us. Some people are going to push aside because it doesn't fall in line with what they know, what they believe, what they've heard, and what they've come to, the conclusions they've come to. And I think for some people, their egos are so big that they can't put aside their own personal beliefs, their own personal desires, their own personal agendas, in order for the truth to come out, in order to face the truth and accept that, because there's healing in the truth. There's I think a freedom in the truth. But where there is lies, there's only more lies that come up and more lies. So when you start to say that there was a relationship, of course somebody's going to come up and say, well, there's a secret child, love child, and all of this. And none of that can happen when you don't have any kind of relationship with somebody. And so, you know, people want to make up all kinds of situations with King. And then it becomes, these stories become his reputation. And I want to debunk all of that today, because his reputation is one that has been destroyed by people that mean him harm, that mean to destroy him because of jealousy and because of envy. They're jealous of his success. They're jealous that they'll never be he as gifted as him. They're jealous of the wealth that he'll always have, if he's free and free enough to enjoy his own money. His own money, by the way. That money does not belong in the hands of thieves and crooks and fake victims. These people don't deserve a cent of anybody's money. They deserve a jail cell and to get commissionary money until they learn to treat people with respect and not be corrupt. They don't deserve to have any kind of compensation for being liars and predators of a celebrity that they once loved and admired. And they once all did. They once all loved and admired King. But at the turn of being rejected, at the turn of a century, when Me Too becomes a phenomenon, then all of a sudden now they're victims of him because they look back and they think, wow, I didn't get that from him. I really didn't get, I didn't even get to have the life I fantasized about that I thought I deserved with him. And now he's got some other girlfriend or maybe he'll have another wife and it won't be me. So now I'm bitter about that. So what am I going to do about it? Well, I can, because I'm a corrupted person who doesn't have morals and no God, I'll concoct this story that will at least, put me ahead financially. If I can't have him, then first of all, I don't want anyone else to have him. So if he's in prison, no other woman can have him. You see how this mentality works of the stalker. To put him away in prison means that no one else can have him, but also it means that they can get to his money. So it's like, well, if I can't have him, at least let me have, some financial money from being around him, because I didn't save anything. All the gifts and money that I did receive from him through like hanging out with him or working for him, I didn't save it. I didn't invest it in anything worthwhile. I spent it on breast enhancements and on fancy, designer clothes and Birkin bags. So now I've got nothing. So now I'm bitter about that because, I spent all this time around him hoping to be his girlfriend and wife, and that didn't happen. So now, because I'm corrupted and I don't have a moral compass to save my soul, I'm going to just lie that he abused me because I just don't care. I don't care about him. Now I'm angry because my love for him has turned to hate. And so I don't have that even feeling of concern for him. So now that hate can be channeled to put him away and not care about his welfare, not care about his life and ruining him. I can say all these things, and not care. And so that's where we're at with all of this. That's the reality of these individuals. It's a horrible place to be in our society where there's so many people willing to lie for money and revenge. But this is the reality. And if people can't accept reality, they're always going to live in delusion and fantasies. That's the cost for the people that are listening here that refuse to accept my truth, the truth and the overall truth, which is King's truth, as reality, which is the reality, the grounded reality. He has a 47-year-old partner and girlfriend of 5 years. We're going on 6 years now. This is our 6th year together. That's the reality. If you can accept that, then congratulations, bravo to you. You're living on this earth plane, living in truth and living in reality of older men that fall in love with older women that are not predatory like you've heard, that are not into underage women just because they're younger, that are not into younger women even just because they're younger. So just all of these things you've got to be able to overcome in your own mind, your own prejudgments about older men, about older wealthy men, about wealthy celebrities, about men like him who've had a very broad love life with lots of liaisons. You have to overcome your prejudices and stereotypes of people, because yes, he's had younger lovers, yes, he's had younger girlfriends than me, but doesn't mean that's his preference and doesn't mean that that's who he wants. And just because a Leah story caught him out in a really horrible situation, that he tainted him in a way that he may never even be able to get his reputation back from. And that's something we have to look at, and who is responsible for these lies, and suing them for the cost to his reputation, his health, and his livelihood, that this story of Aaliyah, this false story of Leah, and even these false stories of Joycelyn and him and RKelly have come to. We've got to look at who's responsible and how they can pay him back for that, pay us back for that, not just him, because now it's me as well. So this whole Joycelyn and Clary's story, somebody's going to pay for that. It's not just like, you can't just do that and then think, oh, well, as long as, he gets released, then everybody will be happy. That's just not what's going to happen. The cost to me has been too grand. I've been accused of being a stalker. I've been accused of being delusional. I've been accused of being a fraud. I've been ostracized. I've been isolated. I've been isolated from him. I've been unable to even go and visit him because of all of this. I've been unable to do things that a normal girlfriend and partner would do for her partner. Normal communications of love and all of these things we've had to just hold off because of this, because we don't want him to be criminalized by the corrupt people in the US government. All these things that have been cost to me. So it's not just to him, a cost to me. I am a victim of this. I don't like the word victim, but it's a cost to me that I'm going to have to re-look at, and look at who's responsible, who's going to pay for that. Because I've lost a lot of time with him. I've lost a lot of time with him. And he's lost a lot of time that he could have had being at home with me. Even his conviction was on the basis of this assumption that he was with RKelly and trafficked her and all of that across borders. And when you talk about trafficking, it's not just moving somebody across borders, it's actually having sex with them. And he never had sex with her at any stage of any timeline. But his attorneys keep pushing this to his detriment. They've done it to his detriment. It's an evil thing. And it's a stupid, belligerent, narcissistic, negligent, inept thing to do. Their attorneys, they studied the law. They should know that this kind of assumption, Jennifer Bonjean knowing the truth and still running this story that implicates him by assumption alone, by calling Azrael his girlfriend, implicates him as being a trafficker, because then you can easily extend that to, well, he moved her across the borders and they were in a sexual relationship and she was 17. Do you understand how that can be moved? How one false story from his attorneys can then be used against him by the court of law and by the government. And that's what's happened. So when you wonder why he was found guilty and convicted, look at that, because New York was all about Azrael and Johanna Pace. Johanna Pace, who I barely talk about because she was just a stalker. All her family members say that she was an obsessed, delusional erotomaniac. And she broke into his home, got his t-shirt, managed to find something with his DNA that she held on to all these years. Surprise, surprise. What do stalkers do? That's what they do. So now that's what they use as evidence against him, because surviving RKelly has already portrayed her as his victim, because that's what she went on to do, because he rejected her, and never in his life looked at this woman as any potential anything. And this broke her erotomaniac mind to pieces. But you only have to see her in reality as a person. You see King and you see her. King has never been with anybody at her level. You just look at what you're dealing with these women. King has been with the most beautiful women in this world. King has been with the most amazingly beautiful women in this world. And you have these women that have hygiene problems, they've got mental health problems, they're psychotic, they don't present well, they don't speak well. And of course, then they can start to say, well, he used that, he exploited all of this because I'm nothing and nobody, and I'm a poor little girl from the neighborhood, and I'm his victim because I'm a little nobody who doesn't even take care of myself. Of course, on the image level, you can look at that and go, well, of course, King is going to pick those people because they would be easily exploited and exploitable. But in reality, if you're a grounded person who wants to base their feet in reality A man like King would never, ever, ever in this lifetime be with a Joycelyn Savage, an RKelly, or a Jahonta Pace. You know, when you think about the way these women even looked after their health, their, you know, all of that stuff, they didn't look after themselves. They didn't even know how to get a job. They didn't even know how to get an apartment. So if you want to know why they ended up staying in Trump condo, is they didn't even know how. When we had them go home in May, they ended up in a women's shelter. Okay, they went home, but then ended up, I hear, allegedly in a women's shelter. So they couldn't even work out with the money that they had earned as an intern, you know, the money in exchange for the assistance. They couldn't even work out how to get themselves their own apartment. So King, in his charity, again allowed them to, you know, stay in his condo, but he was in prison. So then his attorneys have lied to all of you, and they've lied on motion, saying that they were there when he was arrested. They were never there when he was arrested. He was in prison when they were in his condo, and they made a video saying, "We're still here. We're still his loyal girlfriends." Why? Who do you think put them up to that? It wasn't King. King was in prison. You can't accuse him for anything of any of this, because he had his hands tied both in all directions. So you've got to look at the people around that were meant to represent and protect his rights and protect his story and present his story to the courts, and what they did to corrupt his case that led to his false conviction. So they were in his condo because they had nowhere to live and they didn't even know how to find their own apartment. A man like King is never going to have a girlfriend like that. Okay, he's the hottest musician probably of our century, like male musician overall. You know, he's worked in rap, in R&B, with classics, with all kinds of movies, everything. He's done it all. He's written for everybody. Most of the people, the musicians you look at as best, he's written for, you know, or written with, you know. So he's not going to reduce himself to the level of somebody who can't even find their own apartment. And so he has to house and then look like even more of an abusive controller. You know, this is the thing that some of you have to be grounded in reality, that these women were never on his level. They were never on his level mentally, emotionally, psychologically, or in any level. And so, of course, in one dimension, the people who want to portray him as abusive and deviant can twist that reality, that they're not on his level, as him being abusive and exploitive because he has more power, he has more knowledge, he has more maturity. On the real level, you can look at these women and say they had nothing, they came from nothing, they were desperate to be around him, they did everything they could to be around him, and when the time came for them to go home, they could not deal with it. They could not deal with not being around him, they could not deal with him not paying their bills, you know, through working for him or through gifts or charity. So what do they resort to? Because they have nothing to go back to. They resort to crime, and petty crime at that, because their parents come from that. Their parents have huge criminal records. This is what society is not understanding, and this is also what these so-called supporters continue to perpetuate, these false stories that accuse King, and they set a precedent, and they also ruin his reputation out there. And I've constantly told the same story. If you look back at my videos, none of my story, it's never changed. It's never changed. You know, and if you got King and I in separate rooms and you asked him the story of Azure, the real story, and you said, "Look, we know the truth, tell us the real story." And you didn't even tell him that you you just said, "Juliet is there and we've heard her side, tell us the story." He would tell it exactly but his own experience, because he was on the ground with them, dealing with it. I was a bit remote because, you know, of course I was studying, you know, and I was in Australia for some of that time. So you've got all of that. So, you know, like, I just want people to understand the crucialness of not just Kings, but like understanding there's what you perceive as real about people, and then there's the reality of who people are. And when you're lucky enough to find someone like me willing to reveal to you who somebody really is behind the scenes, and their real character, then appreciate it and embrace it, and be open to it, because then it dismantles all your illusions in the world. It stops you from becoming a fanatic who's out there obsessing over somebody else. Because when you understand that these celebrities, no matter what people say about them, they have they have their stage persona, and then they have their home real persona. And even some of their friends may not be clued in about who they really are, because they still have their own autonomy and privacy. I've not met Keith, I've not met Will, I haven't met most of his friends, because our relationship was quite private, and that was intentional, on King's part, but because it was obviously not progressing. It was not, at that stage where I think, he and I, well, we wanted to get, to introduce ourselves. And I think all of this roller coastered out of control to the point where now he's in this fake relationship with these groupies and these interns. So now what can he do? How can he present me as his partner and girlfriend in the right way to anybody he loves and knows? Because, and also because he feels deeply, deeply guilty and responsible for what has happened with this whole mix up. And he shouldn't, he shouldn't, because he's tried to do everything right. We tried it during and after the New York trial to correct that. That's why Kanik in the end, was saying, we're not saying that he slept with RKelly in the closing statements or closing arguments, because Kanik got the message from me through King, about not including Joycelyn Savage. So if you wonder why Joycelyn wasn't a witness then, and some of you are arguing she should have been, no way. If Joycelyn Savage had been put on the stand, you can just expect a worse debacle than there already was. Because already Kanik came in with 2 months to prepare, with Greenbow feeding him the same rubbish and lies. And of course, what is he going to do in court but try to do his best with what he had? So he found out later, like during the trial, about me. And that's why he changed. And the thing is, it was worked out between him and King. It wasn't my decision not to put Joycelyn on it, but I asked him not to include her, sorry. Because I just said it's going to complicate things when we come out as boyfriend and girlfriend. And we were hoping to do that after the New York trial, because we really believed that people would see sense. Or at least with Kanik on board, that we could at least have a clean slate and come out with the truth and tell our story. But that's not what happened, because Jennifer Bonjean came in because, King was desperate to get, those charges removed, those fake and fraudulent false charges removed. And we had Jennifer Bonjean come on board because we thought, she's defended all these people that, and she's helped them come clear of these false charges. So maybe, she can help King. And that's how we were thinking. And I gave King my confidence in Jennifer initially because of her reputation. And I think most of you will probably be the same. And that's maybe why some of you are still on the Jennifer Bonjean train, is because you think because she's done some great work with other people that she's a good person. But you've got to see people are not always the same as, they present, to the public. In private, I've just experienced the horrible narcissism, horrible, malevolent behavior that I can't explain to this day why she would do this to him, to me, and to us. Because you would not do this to a couple who's really trying to fight for freedom, who's really trying to stay together and support each other. You would not put them in a position where they're also fighting for their relationship, for their truth, for their freedom, and all of these levels. If you're a good person, you don't do that. I don't care what your agenda is in freeing him. Freedom, we didn't want freedom at any cost. We wanted freedom with the truth. And we tried that after the New York trial. It just didn't happen. And then King tried to, involve a blogger. I asked King to call up. I said, just call, I'm just online now. I'm going to start, defending you. No one believes me. They're calling me a stalker. I've got this stalker, actual cyber stalker, running around saying that, I'm a stalker because that's who she is. And this person's running around with different names, Stephanie and Rachel and this and that. And some of you will recognize that name, and I've dropped it. But, and not going to drop her surname because obviously I'm not somebody who's going to, dox people or whatever. But, they're the different aliases I knew her as. And she was running around all the chats spreading lies about me. Oh, R. Kelly says he doesn't know this woman. She's a crazy stalker. She's been saying she's pregnant with his baby. She's been calling herself his fiance. Anything she can to get people to believe. And I had all of these bloggers who, because she was a loyal follower of all of them, these bloggers, because she's, the one thing about sociopaths and narcissists is they're very charming. And if you're also a sociopathic personality, then you're going to align very easily with sociopaths and narcissists, and you're going to fall, you're going to work together. You're going to end up working together with them instead of actually exposing them or seeing their insincerity. And so that's what I was watching happen with all the bloggers. She was going from different channels under these different aliases just to slander me. Little old me who was coming on board. And I first at that time I just had a Twitter account and I had Instagram. And the second she noticed me, because of her obsessive nature and her mental disorder, she went on this campaign to smear me as crazy and delusional. So anytime you hear delusional next to my name, it has to do with this woman, because no one knew I even existed except for her. She started a page called Fake Wives of R. Kelly, and she would put me on there. She had her Instagram devoted mostly to me, and so anything I post, she would repost it, and she would say, "Look at this woman, Juliet. She thinks she can take away from Joyce and Savage." Meanwhile, the same woman was running the Joyce and Savage fake account as well, and other fake accounts. So you've got to see, this is like, seriously seriously evil and malevolent person, and she should be in jail, to be honest, and she should be criminalized. She's done so much harm and damage, but I don't want to give her any more credit than is due, because even negative credit for these people, or negative attention, can have them can really excite them. So I don't want to even give her any more like talk time. But I'm just trying to explain why I had King call. I had King call in, I asked him to call a blogger because I identified someone who I thought was doing well and respected, but at the time, and I was new, I was very fresh, and I was a bit naive, to be honest. So I accepted people as who they claimed to be. So I had contacted this blogger and I'd said, "Look, listen, I'm Juliet. I'm a friend of R. Kelly's." I never said I was his girlfriend initially. I just said I'm a friend. And I contacted this blogger and I said, "I'm a friend of R. Kelly's, and I'm going to be like supporting him from here on, and I'm going to be putting out some information, and he's going to be like communicating through me, so to his fans and supporters." So I just want to, and I know that you can't trust me. This is what I said to this blogger, and I posted this publicly, by the way. I even kept the copy of what I posted to her as a receipt, by the way, because I keep everything. I'm a little bit OCD that way. So I said to her, "I know you won't trust me like initially, but I'm going to get him to call you to verify who I am, so that you can trust me." And the reason why I contacted her is I just wanted to get her on board, because she had one of the bigger followings of R. Kelly supporters and fans. And I really wanted them to all come on board to his truth, so we could start spreading the truth of his story, who he really was. Now, when I contacted this woman, her reaction shocked me. I mean, this is a woman who was praying left, right, and center. She was praying every other YouTube live. She had a prayer or an affirmation or something very positive, I thought. So I thought mistakenly, oh, well, this is a good person, and this person will be supportive, and she really appreciates King's story, and she loves God. So I thought. And so then I met with this attack. Like, as I approach her with this very long and lengthy, like almost essay level introduction on her, like she had a Facebook page, community page for R. Kelly supporters. And I posted it there intentionally because I wanted people to witness it, and I wanted it to be public, so that no one could say you never said all of this. So I posted this long essay introducing myself. I'm Lady Juliet. I'm a friend of, Kelly or Robert Sylvester Kelly, and I'm going to start to, I guess, support him, and I'm going to start, and he's going to start to relay some information to his supporters through me. And anyway, so I was met with an attack, and I was met with quite a vicious attack on my, what do you want, and what is this, and who are you? And I was like, you can just read it. It says everything. I've just said who I am. And she was just like, well, I don't know anything about this. And she literally, I was surprised she didn't block me at that stage. And I literally had said in that message, and I posted, actually I made a video, but I took the video off because I didn't want to cause trouble. I'm just not here for all of that. I didn't want to cause divisions, and I didn't want to cause people attacking different people in the future, because when all of this comes out, I don't want people coming back and saying, well, then there's this woman, and attack, because I don't support any of that. I'm just telling you so you understand that King we have really tried different methods to get this truth out, and and King has really tried to support me online. It just didn't work. So anyway, in this passage that I wrote to her on her Facebook page that she had, community page for RKelly, I had some people chiming in and just supporting and saying that's great, some supporters and fans of his. So then I realized other people have seen it, so that's good. So no one's going to come back to me and say it never happened. And at the bottom, I had said, look, I'm going to get him to call you. And at that time, I'd already asked King to call this individual, this blogger, this YouTuber. And I said, King, I need you to call, and I need you to verify who I am, because I can't do anything without your go, because people won't believe me. It's just going to look, dodgy. I'm going to look like a scammer, and who's going to believe me without you? So I said, please call her personally, and, to verify. So I had said to this blogger, he's going to call you in the next, 2 weeks, because it takes him time, to get messages and then organize himself to make those calls. So I said, in the next 2 weeks, he's going to call you. Lo and behold, he calls her, and she makes it public, and she makes a video about it, by the way. And she says, RKelly has called me. And I was excited. I was like, fantastic. So now she knows. And I thought, she would relay, okay, I had this conversation, this woman, Lady Juliet, who talked to me about it. So then she didn't say any of that. She didn't say any of that. She said, oh, he called me, he thanked me. It was really great that, he acknowledged me. So she took all this credit. And then I'm starting to see this character. I'm like, oh my God, this person's not really a very good person. And I'm thinking, what have I done here? I've tried to make a deal with the devil almost, because here I am, thinking I've met a Christian woman who loves God and who's going to be honest and charitable and a great supporter for King and I. And she's twisted things for her own attention. And so then I contact her publicly again and say, what are you doing? I already told you I was going to contact you. And she denied me. She said, I don't even know who you are. She was publicly and humiliating me. She's saying, wow, here's another. And then she made a video about me, by the way, after that, and saying, wow, there's, making me out to be crazy, saying there's this crazy woman that's around and she thinks she's RKelly's girlfriend. So you've got to see how things have just been after that, I said, okay, I'm not dealing with the bloggers again. I'm not going to ask him to call any of them, because I don't want him caught up in any of this or caught up with them. And I don't want them to take credit for him calling, because that's what some of these obsessive people, that's all they need. That they just need that validation from that celebrity, and they will lie to the public and they will twist anybody's reputation, including the person's own partner. They'll twist them publicly so that they get the attention for themselves. So I want you to understand this as I'm talking about stalkers and obsessive people, that the people that you think are the most charitable and the most loyal and helpful can be some of the worst people, I guess, who are involved, who are afflicted with this, this disorder. They can be people that are really obsessive and really needing to have that attention and that contact with celebrities. And it's almost like it's a disorder, because they lie, they cheat, they steal behind the scenes, but on the outside they portray this very humble, very charitable person, very God-fearing even, and even positive. But in the behind the scenes, they've got all this darkness. And I want you all to be aware of that, firstly, when you ask, why King doesn't call through on here, there's a part of that because we've tried it, but also because it's too far down the track now, because, we've got there's so many motions out there, and court proceedings that are happening in the public sphere, that at this point, until we have him home and he can talk freely, which God willing, and we're praying right now that this is, that as I've said, that he's about to come home, that he is about to come home as I know it. But and he'll be released within any hour or day from now. And so that's what, please pray for that. Please, 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 if you're praying for King and I, you really God-fearing, loving human beings, I ask you just to say a little prayer for that, like, to happen as quickly as we expect it. So this can all be over. So all of this, we can start to dismantle all of this, all of this narcissism and sociopathy and fraudulent behavior and fakery and fake good people and fake, charitable people and fake friends and fake girlfriends, fake fiancés, fake attorneys, all of it. The only way that we can dismantle it is through the truth. And we need King. And this is what I told these people that I contacted. I said, everything relies on him being home. He can't do anything until he's free. He's been a prisoner to this system. And it's been intentional to keep him quiet, so then people can say whatever they want to say. And they can win against him by an unfair means, by an unjust means, where he doesn't have the same power that they have. He doesn't have he's not on an equal footing. So to have him home, and we can have our interview, and we can finally make a close to this, and he can really expose all of these demon characters and these devilish, deviant, and narcissistic characters. It's just a dream come true. It's heaven. So please, heaven on earth, I should say. It's not heaven, but it's heaven on earth for me. Like, after all these, years of going through this, I'm ready for the next chapter. I'm eager for the next chapter. I'm eager to put the stalkers behind us. I'm eager to have a life where, we're not stalked. He's not stalked anymore. And people are no longer obsessively hounding him for relationships that he doesn't want, or associations that he doesn't want, or relations that he doesn't want, or family connections that he doesn't want. And he been in a vulnerable position so far, but when he's home, I'm letting you all know, all of that's going to change. Thank God. So whoever you're seeing him contacting, or maybe, thinking he's associating with, take it with a grain of salt. King has been in such a vulnerable position. He's stuck in a hellhole for this moment. And so, to call the outside world and speak to anyone is a pleasure for him. So you've got to see it through those eyes, and not think, oh, well, this person has a special relationship with him, or King is validating anybody's outward statement on YouTube, because he's not. Just because they say, oh, he called me and I spoke to him, so then that confirms I'm his relation. That confirms I'm his friend. No, he does it because he just needs to talk to people outside of where he is, to remember who he is, to remember and remind himself that that's not who he is, and that the outside world, not everybody thinks that he's guilty. So he does it for different reasons. If you were in his shoes, you'd probably do the same. You wouldn't, anyone who wanted to talk to you, you'd probably call up, even though you're on a different level from them, even though you'll never speak to them again, and this, even though you would still and even just to say thank you for this, for the support, you just do it. So take it with a grain of salt. I've had to make peace with it, because I know that this is part of his healing, and part of keeping him sane is that he just needs to talk to people sometimes and just get his voice heard. that, you know, people are reminded that he's there, and reminded that this is an injustice, and reminded that he is grateful and appreciative, you know, regardless of, because, you know, King, how he is, he loves his enemies as much as his supporters. That's who he is. Like, I've never seen anyone more pure heart. I've never met anyone more pure hearted in this world. So just because it's happened to him, it's happened to Jesus as well. This just because somebody is good, you know, or, you know, doesn't mean it can't happen to you or can't happen to them. So never look at a situation from an outside perspective and assume guilt or assume deviance or assume evil just because a mob of the, you know, a world mob even agrees. It doesn't mean anything. So anyway, I hope some of you got something out of that. I think I left a lot of gems to our story, a lot of pieces that I've never filled in before. As I go, I think as we go along, as King and I develop our channels, you're going to hear more and more come out, because we're talking about 30 plus years, 35 plus years of his career. So I can't tell it in 400 videos. I can't tell it in one video. I can't tell it without him here. But, you know, slowly by slowly, you're going to hear the story unravel. And I hope that you're all here to hear that. And that you share it too, not just hear it, but you share it with others that you speak to in your life, that they might learn something, or even just online, that you share it. But don't be attacked. Don't put yourself in a position to be attacked. I shouldn't say online, because there's a lot of haters out there that will attack you for no reason. So, you know, keep yourself safe online and sane, you know, but in private, you know, amongst your friends and family, have these conversations about what you're learning, that they might learn themselves, you know, because the more we get out the truth, the better the world becomes. And the more we get the real corrupted characters, the real criminals, the real pedophiles, the real predators, and we put them away in a place where they can't hurt all of us who are just trying to live our lives and be good people and take care of this planet that we live on. So thank you all for joining me. I'm sorry if I bored some of you to pieces. I just don't mean to, but I think I've got so many things I want to share with you. Sometimes it doesn't come out in one live, but it might come out in the next live. So I encourage you all to keep abreast to my lives, because I always reveal things that I don't even expect myself to say, but it clearly feels like the time to say some of these things that I haven't said before. So thank you again. And I hope you all have a beautiful night or day, wherever you are. And you join me on the next live. And I pray to God that the next live will not be alone. I pray to God in Jesus' name that, that we will have our King back. Okay, love you all. Bye.